nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Ryan, please take roll.
Hardman. Trimble.
Here.
Hudson.
Good evening.
Trevelyan.
Present.
And McKinney.
Here.
We have all 5 members present in the chambers, Your Honor.
All right, any changes to the agenda, Ryan?
There are no changes, Your Honor.
Okay.
Move approval of the agenda as distributed.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The agenda is approved. Item 2 is citizens forum, which is the time for anyone in the audience who would like to address the council on any item that's not part of public hearings, item 6, new business, item 7, or our workshop on Valley Junction. Yes, yeah, if you'll just come up and share your name and your address.
Hello, my name's Anthony Holm. I live at 601 51st Street, West Des Moines. So I've lived here for about 17 years now, and it's a wonderful city. It's lovely, but there's one issue I have in that, like, we have a lot of suburbs in the city, lots of large sprawling housing complexes, and they aren't very walkable. Like, you have to drive to go anywhere worth going, right? Like, yeah, like there are the bike trails, but those still take a very long time. So I think I would like to see the city invest in mixed zoning in specifically our old suburb communities where there just isn't very much commercial business there. It's really only residential. That's really it.
Okay. Well, we appreciate it. We're actually updating our comprehensive plan right now, so that would be part of that whole discussion. So your timing's good on
Awesome.
raising that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, Anthony.
Anyone else for citizens forum? All right.
So this is,
Okay. Someone on the phone for citizens forum?
hello?
Yes?
Hello, this is Jonathan Weaver. I grew up in West Des Moines at 216 25th Street, and I'm moving back here shortly. I've been hearing from different friends, reading concerns about the new fiber project, and have some issues with how it's been given to one company, this big contract. From what I'm reading in the minutes, it's already projected that it'll be hundreds of thousands over budget. Can you please comment? Thank you.
Yeah, Jonathan, I think you know there's litigation, so we really can't comment on it. But it's open to any provider. In fact, CenturyLink's on here tonight for a lease that MediaCom's objecting to. So,
And I want to make sure, I want to say one more thing too. You know, there's been false information put out there that we have given $50 million to a company, and that is not true. We haven't given them one dime, not one. So they're going to be paying us for the use of our conduit, and that's the truth of the matter. So people are trying to mislead you out there. Don't believe them.
yeah. And I guess the other thing, and Brian, correct me, I think every award we've granted for that project's been under the engineering estimate. So this project is well under budget.
Yep.
All right, anyone else for citizens forum? Okay, we'll move on to mayor, city council, city manager reports, and we'll start with Catherine on the chamber.
Thank you very much. Catherine Harrington, President and CEO of the West Des Moines Chamber of Commerce. So I'm so excited to be here today. Do you mind if I take my mask off? Is that
No,
okay? Thank
Be
you.
great, thanks.
I would like to update the community on the exciting things the chamber has been involved with over the last year, and we are going to go really super quick over this. I know we have a lot to accomplish tonight, but I did want to highlight the amazing things that the West Des Moines Chamber team and community is involved with in making our city the best city in America to live, work, and play. This is our chamber team. We are filled with experts in promoting our beautiful city to help us stay competitive. We have a new team member. We're growing so much that we hired as well that just started today to help with our membership and to help our businesses grow. Tom Florian. Our mission of the chamber is we are here to champion all things West Des Moines by strengthening our area companies, providing personalized resources, and attracting a top workforce to position West Des Moines as the best suburban city in America. And our vision for the future is to make West Des Moines the best suburban city in America to live, work, and play. Our goals are to keep our area companies in business, our employees employed, and our region strong, and that is particularly important during this crazy COVID year. This year, all of our programming revolves around these four themes, actually: progress, positivity, possibility, and perseverance. This is a sample of some of our events. Our first event kicked off with amazing people around the state that are doing incredible things for our community: Simon Estes, Renee Hardman, Dr. Richard Deming, Beth Shelton, Sue Karadia, and Dan Houston, to name a few. I think this slide is really important. I have been president and CEO of the Chamber for a year, and since that year, we have accomplished a lot. Now, haven't been here for 97 years, but the Chamber has been around for 97 years, and that's an incredible legacy for our region, and not a lot of people know that. We are 711 members strong, soon to be 1,000. We're reaching that goal pretty soon. 30.5% of our members are not even in West Des Moines. A lot of people want to work with West Des Moines companies. We have 5 active committees. 165 members have been with us for 10 or more years, which is amazing. We produce about 110 events a year. We're a very busy chamber. We have about 75 ribbon cuttings a year in a non-COVID year. We have a lot of email newsletters that reach the broad community and the state at large. And our reach is 4,200. Our social media reach is 100,000. We have 6 full-time team members, and we hire interns as well. Currently, we have 4 interns. And in 2020, 2021 combined so far, we have donated $15,000 to area nonprofit organizations. This is a testimony campaign. We have a lot of amazing chamber members that love the chamber, and you can see this on all of our social media feeds. In 2020, we started a lot of new programs. This is just a few. We will not cover them. We do not have time today. What's really exciting is we have been awarded to nominate and for something called Chamber of the Year. You have to be an outstanding chamber to be nominated for this. So we are going for Chamber of the Year, and we will know in a couple of months if we made Chamber of the Year. This is a national award program. We are avid promoters of our city. This is our YouTube channel, and you can see a lot of our events on our YouTube channel that helps companies stay and get stronger. We have something brand new called our CEO Insights video series. Tom Haddon is here.
That guy.
We've been promoting our area restaurants with Takeout Tuesday videos highlighting our great restaurants. We started a brand new email newsletter called West Des Moines News, and companies can submit their press releases for this if they have a new hire, if they have a new program, or some accolades they want to promote. This comes out every Tuesday. We started a brand new event called Best of the West in 2020, believe it or not, in a COVID year. And this event was so successful, we had 3,300 votes, 50 winners in 50 categories, and we were also able to donate 2,300 to the West Des Moines Community Foundation. And what is pretty cool about that is this logo is now synonymous. You'll see this in ads. This is the DSM magazine from May, and the Ron Pearson Center was so excited. They won Best Event Venue, that this is something they're highlighting. You'll see a lot of other people doing that as well. We are inclusive. We have lots of resources for diverse companies, employees, and workforce, and allies. We started a brand new DEI committee led by Angela Jackson. 2 huge initiatives: Diversity Fundraiser and National Black and Brown Business Summit. The Black and Brown Business Summit was on April 22, 23. Again, this was a national event. We are here to position West Des Moines as one of the most inclusive cities in America, and this event really helped us do that. Principal was our presenting sponsor. We had national speakers, and we promoted 29 diverse vendors. Hy-Vee was our pitch competition sponsor, and we had a pitch competition where we gave $10,000 to pitch competition winners. Our first place winner received $5,000, Israel Tutson, owner of V-Vibes. So pretty cool stuff. During this, we also donated $3,000 to Jules Academy and the NAACP through a t-shirt fundraiser that we worked on all year long. And we had a wonderful event celebration that Renee Hardman was part of. So thank you, Renee, for being part of that. We also had our Mel Essex Award winner, Pernell Caesar, co-founder of Black and Bold Coffee, won our Mel Essex Award. This is a very huge slide, but it just shows impact across a variety of categories and the amazing work the Chamber is doing to promote our city. We worked and partnered this year on the MLK luncheon. It was fabulous. We had about 125 people at that luncheon. Workforce is a key part of what makes West Des Moines great. Obviously, we have a lot of large companies in our backyard. We are very proud of that. And we have a lot of workforce initiatives, including highlighting summer interns, the West Des Moines Leadership Academy in its 13th year. We have raised over $200,000 going to nonprofits and near 400 graduates. We are excited to announce a brand new program this year, also called the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Workplace Excellence Awards. We are helping companies understand how diversity is critical for their business, and this will be August of this year. We have a brand new group called West YP to get those young folks excited about living in West Des Moines and staying in West Des Moines. New student email newsletter, new monthly leadership newsletter, and thank you for the mayor and city council for working on us on our first annual Day of Kindness. We started a new committee called Explore West Des Moines. Key initiatives include Rescue the Raccoon and the brand new Raccoon River Rally, which announcement on October 2, we're going to be doing an amazing event at Raccoon River. It will have cardboard boat rides, a band or two or three, food trucks, beer trucks, a bicycle ride, and you name it, we're going to show it off. So here's to a healthy 2021, and thank you so much for your time. If you want to find out more, check out our YouTube channel. There's a lot of great info there. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Catherine. Questions for her? I mean, you've done a fabulous job, especially in light of the pandemic. Right. How much has gone on, and I know I've had a chance to do some things with you guys. So kudos to you.
Thank
You guys have mastered how to run a chamber in the middle of a pandemic.
Yeah, Catherine, you're doing it all. I don't know what it is that you're not doing. You're just out there promoting West Des Moines each and every day and West Des Moines businesses, and just your creativity is unbelievable in all the things that you've gotten into. And I'm sorry I missed, I think we had a meeting today on the West Des Moines committee or whatever, and I apologize, but I'm excited to see that we're doing that Raccoon River Rally, and that's going to be really exciting and fun, you know, to have those bands and the food trucks and the cardboard boat rides. Wow. Wow, I'm about to go on a diet, I think.
Yeah, if I could too, I would like to echo what the mayor is saying and what Councilman Trimble has said as well. This chamber is absolutely remarkable. They're really the marketing arm, I see, of city council work and really promoting the great things that we have in this city. And most of us may know that Catherine started during a pandemic. I think her first day was when the state had been closed down. And to see the innovative and the creative things that she has brought to light in the short tenure that she has at the chamber, it is unbelievable. And I think we saw the staff, and it wasn't 30 people. It wasn't 15 people. We're talking about 6.5 people, and 6.5, I should say. Okay, and it is just amazing. So I just say, Catherine, as an elected official, I want to say thank you for the work of your staff. You guys are really doing a phenomenal job of promoting West Des Moines, the leaders in West Des Moines, and you have elevated the profile of diversity and inclusion and equity like no other chamber in this state. So congratulations.
Thank you. It's an honor. It's an honor to serve, and it's an honor to serve our members. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you for all you're doing,
Thank
Catherine.
you.
If there's something we can do in helping you guys win that award, just let us know what we got to do.
It's going to be a big deal. So thank you.
All right, council reports, Matt.
Yep, thank you, Mayor. Just a couple brief items. We had a Bravo board meeting I think it was last week now, and they continue to climb out of the difficult times as a result of the pandemic and obviously the impact of the hotel motel funding. I think Sally Dix may, she's the executive director, may come to council sometime here soon, give us a bit of an update. But they are exploring different tools that nonprofits can use amongst the community to perhaps make things more efficient and dollars go a little bit further. And I think a lot of very good things are happening there, and I look forward to hopefully her being able to come here and share some of that stuff when it becomes public. We had Councilwoman Hardman and I had a development and planning subcommittee this morning focused on a very exciting project along a very high trafficked area of our community on Ashworth and Jordan Creek Parkway. Learned a lot about a lot of considerations that go into that, but ultimately we got to a point of support for the project. I'm really excited to see where that goes. So that's all at this time, Your Honor.
All right, Kevin.
Nothing this time.
Greg?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple of things. This week we had a Convention and Visitors Bureau meeting, and the CVB obviously has struggled over the last year, as Catherine can attest to. Sorry, I just want to make sure this is on. Good. I'll put it on my lapel. That'll be easier. All right. As Catherine can attest to, certainly the tourist community in Central Iowa has struggled quite a bit, and thus the Visitors Bureau and Conventions Bureau has also struggled. For the last fiscal year, hotel usage in West Des Moines was down 48%. The final figures are in since last March, and it's just devastating for not just our hotel and motel fund tax fund, but also for just the peripheral benefits that we have from visitors coming and shopping and living and playing in our area. But the projections for the coming year are 25% higher than they are right now. So it's a slow comeback, but the CVB wanted to remind us that we are doing a really good job in Central Iowa promoting our entire region, because especially considering some other states are closed down a little bit more, and so Des Moines is becoming a much more attractive option than some other places. And so therefore we are encouraging a lot of other conferences and conventions to come to our metropolitan area, which of course will benefit West Des Moines, because then they'll come out to our community and play and shop and dine here. So we are on our way up a little bit, but still it's a slow go to return to any sort of normalcy in regards to the hotel and motel situation. But we are on our way up. And again, Catherine, I just want to thank you. It's been 13 months on the job, a very insane 13 months in so many ways, but I mean, you just go a mile a minute, and I appreciate your heart, and I appreciate the devotion that you have to our great city of West Des Moines, because when the city and the chamber are working together, gosh, great things are going to happen, and they have happened, and they're going to continue to happen, and our city is going to continue to get better. So thank you for your presentation again, and just awesome job, and that's it.
Okay, thanks. Russ?
Yeah, F&A met, and I'm going to bring up two things that we discussed. One, kudos to staff for getting creative, thinking outside the box. Staff has worked on a program using our CDBG COVID-19 funds to essentially reach out, do public outreach and education and marketing to help low-income individuals in our community with acquiring high-speed broadband for a very affordable price. So we're looking at using these federal dollars to market a federal program that exists right now. Staff has really been dotting their I's and crossing their T's and making sure that we have a program that is workable and makes a lot of sense and gets a good bang for the buck. And at the last F&A meeting, they went through and did an analysis if a small portion of the people actually, if this helps them and they get this high-speed broadband, get a discount through this federal program, it will pay dividends over and over again. So we're going to be having that program moving forward. We also talked about the regular CDBG FY22 annual action plan. And with that action plan, there are a couple items here. We're going to be using some money, as we always do, for administration. We're going to have some money toward the transit passes, about $29,000 to go towards the transit passes. Homeless prevention, we'll have 20,000 that will go towards that. And then we're gonna have a new program here. I'm a little bit leery of this because we've tried this in the past and it really didn't work. But we've got $217,000 allocated for rental rehabilitation program. I'm not sure I agree with the exact dollar amount that's going to this. I think this is something that we're gonna have to discuss as a council when it comes to the dais. But Councilman Hudson and I did talk about this program, and if we do it and other programs like it, you know, we've talked about what's that right area median income to use for these type of programs. And it's been said that, you know, what we're using right now is too high, which is the HUD level at 80% or under. And so we kind of explored a little bit, trying to come up with what we thought the right AMI would be to have people participate in this program. And I think we both agreed, you know, an entry-level teacher coming into the community is somebody that we would want to make sure that we're able to house and take care of. And so for that, we went down to 60% or lower of AMI to take advantage of this new program. But again, we're allocating about $217,000 towards this. I think that may be a little bit high, especially given the fact that we ran this program in the past and it was not successful. So I would just encourage us when it comes to the dais to have a discussion about that and determine what the right amount of money is to put towards that program. So that is all for my report, Your Honor.
Okay, Renee?
Thank you, Your Honor. I attended the library board meeting and trustee meeting, and the library is open, yay. So we're very happy to be back in business. I stopped by there for a retirement of a person that has been there for 20 years on Friday, and boy, I took a little walk around and very, very proud of the new teen center that we have at the library. So if you have not seen that, it is a vibe place to be. Pretend you're a teen and sit down there and experience what it feels like. I won't reiterate again, the Black and Brown Summit I spoke at last Friday, very nice initiative. What was so exciting is that there was a keynote speaker that committed, I think, on the spot for $10,000 for this next year's pitch competition. So what a way to go when you don't have to try to re-up that and renew that $10,000 commitment, and they just said it right after their speech that they're in. So that says a lot for Catherine and what they've been doing and how impressed he was about the summit. I want to share, I want to shine a light, take a moment of personal privilege to shine a light on a new facility in town, and it's the Grand Living Tower Place. And it's right across from our Hy-Vee on Mill Civic. And they had a little ribbon cutting coming the last Thursday. I missed the ribbon cutting, but I was there for the tour. And then the next day at 10 o'clock, I went for the flag raising ceremony that was done by the VF Post in Valley Junction. And you have got to see that facility. That facility is just absolutely exquisite. I think I wanted to go home and start packing and moving in next month. Probably can't afford it, but it is just a phenomenal place. Really happy they're in West Des Moines. It's very nicely located, but that's a really neat senior living facility, first class in our city. And I was proud to walk around and take a look at it. There's going to be a major grand opening in June, so they're planning a really, really festive time after they've worked out a lot of kinks. But it's a place that you could live, or your seniors could live, or grandparents can live, or whomever, and be in first class. So that concludes my report. Thank you.
Tom?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in recent weeks, we've been visited by two different accreditation groups. One was for the West Des Moines Police Department. It's the Commission on Accreditation for Law Enforcement Agencies, CALEA. And I think it went very well. These accreditations are important for our public safety departments to keep up at a high level, keep their policies and procedures, and learn the latest and greatest what's going on. And then the fire department, their accreditation group came here last week for the Center for Public Safety, and they were well received. And these people come from all over the country, a small group that come here, and then they look through how we're doing things. And so it's a very good exercise for our departments. And our departments are doing well, and they'll be officially notified soon that they have been official accreditation for this year, so.
Yeah, that's
5
not
years.
easy, and I know there's a lot of work that goes into that. You know, every year when we kind of put together this state of the city, one thing that we're always happy to report on is there's only about a dozen cities in the United States that have all their public safety departments nationally accredited. So I always say if you call 911 in this community, you get the finest public safety anywhere in the United States. And so we appreciate the effort of our departments to do that, because I know sometimes it's a full dedicated person or two. But as Tom said, it just ensures that we're, you know, we know what the national standards are and the cutting edge things and our policies and procedures. And so we appreciate the dedication of our staff to be willing to go through that process. Before I get to consent agenda, make note that we got another MediaCom letter raising concerns about the items dealing with the fiber project. So we'll pull 4M1, 4M2, 401, and 4Y from the consent agenda. And then item 6I, 1 through 3, that involves CenturyLink. We'll make sure that the letter is a part of the council materials on those items. So other than those 4 items I mentioned on the consent agenda, does any council member want to pull any other item? Otherwise, I'd take a motion for the rest of them.
I'd move the remainder.
Second.
On Y, right? 4Y?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, those items are approved. I think we can take 4M1 and 2 and 401 together, because those all involve the city's conduit project. So someone want to move those 3?
Move approval.
Is there a second? All right, all in favor, please?
But I do have one question. I just want to emphasize this yet again, and I know that staff gets this. I think they're relaying it to our contractors, but, you know, when we're looking at at restoration, we're looking at doing this work, we're looking at the restoration that's being done. I know we're trying to go above and beyond in the restoration, and that is extremely important to me, and I think everybody up here, as we are going through people's lawns and putting the conduit to people's properties. You know, I think that's one of the biggest issues that we've had in this city, is when we're doing work that the contractor doesn't restore the ground the way that it was before they got there. And so I just want to make sure that we are doing everything that we can, Brian, to contact these contractors and just, I mean, beat them over the head with it. They need to restore people's lawns to the condition that it was before they got there. I do not want to be dealing with homeowners upset with the restoration job that these contractors have done. And so we got to be all over them and just make sure we beat it in their heads repeatedly. And I'm just going to keep saying that until you get sick and tired of it, and just literally beat them over the heads with it.
If I can expand on that, not only their yards, but also the right of way, because the majority, and I'm going to say 99.9% of the people think that because they have to mow between the street and the sidewalk, that that's their property. It's city right of way, but that doesn't mean that the contractor can do half-hearted work out in the right of way, even though we're saying you got to take care of the yards. So to me, it's anything that they're tearing up, they need to make darn sure that they're getting it restored back better than it was. I know I've called Brian or emailed him a couple of different times when I've seen things out there that the contractors are doing that's not the way it should be done. So and I knew this was going to be an issue when you've got that many contractors to deal with. Obviously, our inspectors can't be out there seeing everything, and obviously with my experience, I know what is supposed to be done, so I bring it to Brian's attention, and he gets on them right away.
Yeah, I've just seen this too many times. The 2 biggest issues that we have with all these projects are communication and restoration. You know, so you've got to be communicating, letting people know we're coming onto their property, what's going on, keep the public informed. You guys are doing a great job, but just keep that up, and then restoration is huge, so.
Okay, so the motion is to approve 4M1 and 2 and 401. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Those
I
items are...
will
Oh,
abstain.
sorry, yeah, Matt
Thank
abstained.
you, Mayor, for
Sorry
the
about
same
that.
reasons I have on all these items.
Yep. And then 4Y is a resolution to approve the cost-sharing fiber agreement with CenturyLink Communications. Kevin, do you have something else on that one?
No, I just got a question on it.
Okay.
How is this different than what we just approved with the project the city's putting in. I guess I'm a little confused as to why we're doing a separate conduit for CenturyLink down First Street along Browns Woods area. And I don't quite understand what the benefit is to us and how is, because my understanding is that the fiber project that we're doing, conduit project, that it was Google Fiber for 18 months, and then anybody else can come in. This one is specifically for CenturyLink, so why the difference?
Yep, Brian Hemisath, city engineer. There's two main reasons we're doing this conduit network. Number one is to dig once, and if we can get people to use our conduit network, that's a huge win for us. We can start paying back the loans we have on the work itself. The second, if we can't get to that point, what we've been doing with other companies is we work with them to either pull another conduit for them and then share in the cost. So we're gonna run underneath the Raccoon River and underneath the levee. Those are very difficult things to go under. The levee especially, because any penetrations under the levee is just another way that there could be a breach. But we work with the Corps of Engineers on that, and so on that particular one, the costs to do that are very high. We knew that we would have to do that. Lumen CenturyLink came to us and said that they needed something to go to another location across that river. We knew that we would be doing it. We're expediting that piece. We're sharing in the costs, and it's going to save the city a couple $100,000 because we would have had to have those costs anyway. So they're just going to work with us and put another conduit in that bore across the river.
But is the Google Fiber project not going south on First Street from Railroad?
It most certainly is, yes.
So why that's what I'm understanding, why the two projects? And if this is going to Park Avenue, to me, this tells me CenturyLink's going to go east on Park Avenue and serve Des Moines. So they ought to be on the east side of Highway 28 and have a Des Moines pay this. I don't see where West Des Moines is going to benefit from this because we've got nothing out there. And if we've got the Google Fiber project already going out there and is going to feed Veterans Parkway and all that stuff down that way, what's the benefit to West Des Moines on this for us to pay $200,000 of taxpayer dollars? To me, it's a Des Moines project.
No, what we're doing is we're going to be putting in, we're going to be going across there anyway with this project. It's just that this with the conduit network project for the city, that Google Fiber is the initial tenant in. So we were planning on doing this bore, putting in this conduit anyway, and they came to us with a cost sharing agreement. So it's actually going to cost the city.
I understand that, Brian, but I guess I'm not explaining it correctly or not making myself understood. But if we're putting in the Google Fiber south of the river, south of Railroad already, that CenturyLink can get in 18 months, why do we need two? That's what I'm not understanding. To me, this is two different conduits. One's for CenturyLink and one's for our stuff.
Understood. Okay, I get what you're saying now. What we decided to do when they came to us, they had an expedited timeline. We didn't have one for that particular section, so all we did was took advantage of their timeline and work together with them, and that's something that we will continue to do if there's other folks that are out in other places where maybe we weren't planning on going right away, but they're saying they want to go on the right of way. We'll work with them to try to get their conduits in with ours, because if it didn't meet their timeline. So instead of having two separate penetrations underneath the levee and underneath the river, now we have one. It's following through with essentially our dig once policy.
And if I might, Kevin, too, CenturyLink isn't necessarily going to use all the conduit that we put in for the digital enterprise. They want to use this for their own purposes, right? So that's why they've decided to use this. It's separate from, we're using it in conjunction with the digital enterprise. CenturyLink is saying, we want to have our own conduit for ISP, for fiber in some areas of the city. It's not part of the digital enterprise. So we just teamed up at this time.
Okay, but I thought that's what we were trying to get away from.
It is, it just,
So again, I just, if we're already putting it in down there and we've got conduit going in all over this city, I still don't see where West Des Moines residents are going to benefit from this if this is stopping at Park Avenue. If CenturyLink's got plans to keep going, then they need to be in the conduit that we're putting in as our infrastructure.
Aren't we just saving money? Because CenturyLink's covering half of the boring under the Raccoon River?
To Park Avenue. That's my point. What am I missing?
if we wouldn't have done this, they would have done it on their own.
Okay.
And if we would have waited, then when we did the work, it would have cost us clear $400,000 to do ish. That's the engineer's estimate. That's what it would have cost us.
But we're going farther south anyhow.
Correct.
With the Google Fiber.
Right.
But this is saving the taxpayer $200,000. That's what I'm hearing from you, Brian. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
This isn't going to cost the city more. We're just expediting a piece of the project that we were already.
We're not duplicating services here,
No.
right? This is the same thing we would do for the fiber project, except we're doing it sooner in that leg. And we're saving money because we're teaming up with CenturyLink. So there's not going to be another fiber link going, another conduit. This is it. This is our conduit.
All the conduit's going to go on the ground with this project for the West Des Moines conduit network.
But the agreement said that Google was in there for 18 months and then others could join. This is changing that.
No, they don't, CenturyLink does not want to be in our conduit.
This is a different pipe.
In this area.
That's my point. It's a different pipe. It's going to serve CenturyLink down to Park Avenue to go east on Park. So what's the benefit to West Des Moines?
Because we're saving $200,000 by piggybacking with them to put ours in.
Right.
That really
Any of
is
these
what it is.
providers can come in and put in their own network if they wanted to.
Well, and they don't even have to use the conduit. I mean, this will help clean up the right-of-way as well. I mean, that's another benefit that we're going to get from it.
Right, and instead of having, and they could, Kevin, I get your point, they could go down the Des Moines side with this conduit. We thought it would be better to save that $200,000 and team up with them. And that's going to be our goal throughout this entire project, is if there are others that want to team up with us with a joint bore, we will entertain those offers to try to save the money on the total project.
And because there's only one hole, for lack of a better term, going under the Raccoon River, this is actually more environmental than having two separate holes, and it would less likely to breach the levee.
There's significant permitting. There's a lot of things that only have to be done once here that's going to save everybody money, and we can share in all those costs.
Okay, well, again, I was under the impression with this whole infrastructure that we were going to get away from having people put in their own stuff.
That's the goal.
And they were going to be part of this conduit network, and that's not what I'm hearing now. It's like if somebody wants to put in another one on the opposite side of the street, they can do it. So I'm not sure what we're
It's a cost
accomplishing with
analysis
this.
that the companies do, and if they decide that they want to get out in front of this and put the conduit in to serve customers, then they can do that. We can't require them to be in the conduit, but it's much more beneficial to most ISP providers to be
Okay.
in our conduit because we're building the road, so to speak, so they can drive the cars in it.
Except in this case. Okay,
Well,
all right.
and we wouldn't do it if it didn't save taxpayers money. We wouldn't be doing it.
Well, yes, we would, because we're still going to go south of First Street down to Veterans Parkway.
We would have done it.
Conduit network.
We would have done it as part of the project, the original project schedule, and just put it in as part of a bigger
Right.
project. Right.
But we're saving more money this way.
That
So
is
you're
correct.
saying this 4,234 feet alone is a cost of $400,000?
Yeah, but that river crossing is very expensive.
Okay, all right.
All right, someone want to move 4Y?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
And Mayor, I will
Or, sorry,
abstain
yeah.
and just have the record reflect, I also abstain from the deliberation on that as well.
Okay. Item 5, old business, 5A, Village of Ponderosa, 545, 565, and 570 Market Street, 5905 Stagecoach Drive, amend the specific plan ordinance to modify setback and maximum height limitations, LENL LLC. We have a resolution for the third reading and final adoption, or I mean an ordinance for the third reading and final adoption that we have to take separately.
Move to consider it the third reading?
Second.
Any other questions or comments on the ordinance? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Any abstentions? All right, the ordinance passes.
4 yes, 1 no, an ordinance amending ordinance number 1701, 1793, 1846, 2093, 2138, and 2208 to amend the Village of Ponderosa specific plan ordinance to modify development regulations and architectural concepts.
Move to approve the third reading and adopt in final form?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
And any abstentions? All right, that item's approved. Item 2 is a resolution to approve and accept the documents.
Move for approval?
Second.
Questions or comments? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Any abstentions? All right, those items are accepted. 5B, Wendy's, 225 and 301 Grand Avenue, establish the Wendy's Plan Unit Development to govern development of a Wendy's restaurant, Wendy's West Maple LLC. This is an ordinance for the second, third reading. Final adoption, there are no changes from the first reading.
Move consideration of second reading.
Second.
Questions or comments? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, Ryan.
5 yes, an ordinance amending the official zoning map in the city code of the city of West Des Moines, Iowa, 2019 by amending Title 9 zoning, Chapter 9, Plan Unit Development District pertaining to Plan Unit Development District regulations and guidelines.
Move approval of the second reading.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right,
Move waiver of the third reading and adoption in final form.
Second.
all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that item's approved. 5C, West Glen Town Center, North Village, 450 South Prairie View Drive, amend the specific plan ordinance for parcel A to allow residential development, WD Real Estate Holdings, Inc. This also is an ordinance for the second, third reading. Final adoption, there are no changes from the first reading.
Move a consideration of second reading.
Second.
Questions or comments? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, Ryan.
5 yes, an ordinance amending the city code of the city of West Des Moines, Iowa, 2019 in West Glen Town Center specific plan number 62, ordinance numbers 1514, 1593, 1632, 1687, 1724, 1780, 1792, 1806, 1887, and 2152, according to Title 9 zoning, Chapter 9, Plan Unit Development District pertaining to PUD district regulations and guidelines.
Move approval of second reading.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right.
Move waiving of the third reading and move to final adoption.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The ordinance is approved. Item 6, public hearing. We have a number of them tonight. Item 6A, this is the time and place for a public hearing to consider South Branch Business Park, southwest corner of Southeast Army Post Road and Southeast 42nd Street, amend the comprehensive plan land use map and amend the zoning map to designate 12 acres of general industrial land use and to business park plan unit development initiated by SBBP JV 21 LLC. This is continued from the April 19th City Council agenda. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
April 8th, 2021 in the Des Moines Register.
Have you received any written comments?
Plan and Zoning Commission, by a vote of 7 yes, adopted a resolution recommending approval of the comp plan amendment and rezoning request.
All right, now be the time for anyone in the audience that'd like to address the City Council on item 6A. Okay, hearing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. The council communication indicates there's no outstanding issues. We have a resolution and an ordinance. We need to take them separately. So the first item is a resolution to approve the comprehensive plan amendment.
Move approval of a resolution.
Second.
Questions or comments on the comp plan amendment? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? The comp plan's approved. Item 2 is an ordinance for the first reading.
Move consideration of the first reading.
Second.
Questions or comments on the ordinance?
I just say this came before the Development Planning Subcommittee back in, I think it was November. And we, took a lot of care to make sure that this particular area, which will be maybe near future park and outdoor recreation area, will be sufficiently buffered because there's going to be some outdoor storage there, and it also has some visibility along Highway 5 and I-35. So we found some comfort there and certainly support it.
Okay, all in favor of the first reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, Ryan.
5 yes, an ordinance to amend the city code of the city of West Des Moines, Iowa, 2019 by amending Title IX zoning, Chapter 9, Plan Unit Development District pertaining to PUD district regulations and guidelines.
Move approval.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the first reading's approved. Item 6B, this is the time and place for a public hearing to consider 130 South 9th Street and city-owned parcels to be to the south of Lincoln Street between 600 and 900 block, amend comprehensive plan, land use map, and zoning map to establish business park land use and zoning on a portion of 130 9th Street, and to establish open space land use and zoning on a city-owned property south of Lincoln Street, initiated by the city of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
April 21, 2021 in the Des Moines Register.
Have you received any written comments?
Plan and Zoning Commission, by a vote of 7 yes, adopted a resolution recommending approval of the comp plan amendment and rezoning request.
All right, now would be the time for anyone in the audience who would like to address the city council on item 6B. All right, seeing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Again, we have 2 items we have to take separately. The first one is a resolution to approve the comprehensive plan amendment.
Move approval of comp plan amendment.
Second.
Questions or comments?
I'd also say that, Mayor, this too came before the Development and Planning Committee, and it sounds like this is as a result of maybe some prior interest in the property. I had some concern that maybe we were changing the zoning in relation to an existing plan, but after speaking with legal, it sounds like those prior plans had gone away, and so there's no kind of taking, so to speak, that would occur. So we're supportive of moving it forward.
All right, all in favor of the comp plan amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That's approved. Item 2 is an ordinance for the first reading.
Move consideration of the first reading.
Second.
Questions or comments on the ordinance? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, Ryan.
5 yes, an ordinance to amend the official zoning map of the city of West Des Moines, Iowa, 2019 by amending Title IX zoning, Chapter 4, zoning districts and maps.
Move approval of the first reading.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the first reading's approved. Item 6C, this is the time and place for a public hearing to consider the conveyance of a portion of a vacated and excess industrial circle right-of-way to Triple J Logistics LLC, initiated by the city of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
April 29th, 2021 in the Des Moines Register.
Have you received any written comments?
None, Your Honor.
All right, now be the time for anyone in the audience who would like to address the city council on item 6C. Okay. Seeing and hearing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. We formerly had a cul-de-sac that was going to be located here, which is not needed, so that's what's created the excess right-of-way. So it's a resolution to approve the conveyance of that excess right-of-way.
Move approval.
Second.
Any other questions or comments?
Why are we not selling this? Why are we giving it to them? Seems to me in previous times when we've had excess right away, it would be sold to adjacent property owners if they were interested.
These small pieces are so, of such minimal value, they're not buildable, they're, when they're adjacent to one particular owner, it has some value to them, but to establish an objective value, they're really minimal, so we just consider the cost of maintenance to us is equal to the consideration if they take that over, so we've handled a lot of small piece right-of-way conveyances that way. I mean, this would be the value to us to get rid of it, so to speak, because of the maintenance cost is probably equivalent to any value that they would have to pay.
Yeah, no, we haven't done that over the last 20 years, or 20 years ago, we didn't do that, but
All right, all in favor of the resolution, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? That item's approved. Item 6D, the council's being asked to continue that to the May 17th council agenda.
move continuation.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Item 6E, this is the time and place for a public hearing to consider issuance of not to exceed $91,900,000 of general obligation urban renewal bonds initiated by the city of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
April 20th, 2021 in the Des Moines Register.
Have you received any written comments?
None, Your Honor.
Right now be the time for anyone in the audience who'd like to address the city council on item 6E. Okay. Seeing and hearing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed, and these are related to Microsoft's Project Ginger West project. So we have a resolution to institute proceedings to take additional action.
Move approval.
Second.
Questions or comments?
I would just say these Microsoft projects that we've had, have been once-in-a-lifetime projects several different times now. We've been extremely lucky to be able to get these projects. And, I want to say that the total taxable valuation created by these projects all combined exceeds over $1 billion. So that's a huge deal, helps expand our tax base and help keep taxes down for everybody else. So very appreciative of Microsoft and these projects, and it's just a great deal for the city.
And provide so many of the amenities that we enjoy as a city.
Correct.
Absolutely.
Help build schools and everything else.
Yeah, and I guess to
Job creation.
close that out, we had an event for their second one, and actually, the governor came, but Gretchen Taylor came as the director of the Polk County Taxpayers Association, and made the observation that the development agreements that the city has on these data centers are the appropriate way to structure these for the benefit of property tax payers. And so we were pleased that Gretchen validated the way that our development agreements work on these data centers. Okay, so all in favor of 6E, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mayor, I will abstain from this one for
Okay,
appearance of conflict.
abstentions, we'll show that. Okay, 6F, this is the time and place for a public hearing to consider the 88th Street reconstruction, Ashworth Road to Abram Drive, initiated by the city of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
April 23rd, 2021 in the Des Moines Register.
And have you received any written comments?
None, Your Honor.
All right, now be the time for anyone in the audience that'd like to address the city council on item 6F. Seeing and hearing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. We have a resolution to approve the plans and specs, a motion to receive and file the report of bids, and a resolution to award the contract. Staff's recommending that we award it to the second low bidder because the low bidder's bid is considered non-responsive, so needs to be rejected.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any other questions or comments?
Oh yeah, this is one that I've always been keeping my eye on because that's the western portion of our city, which is 88th Street, and it's been unpaved for such a long time. And I know so many residents of Ward 2 especially are so excited to get a much easier access from Mill Civic to Ashworth Road without having to go all the way to 81st Street or Jordan Creek. So this is exciting. Two things that are especially exciting. This bid came in $400,000 lower than the anticipated cost, so that's really exciting for the taxpayer. And number two, the date to be opened by traffic by October 31st, that is a great Halloween. So I'm really looking forward to it, and hopefully that we can proceed with this project without delay. I'm enthusiastically supportive.
Okay. All in favor of 6F 1, 2, and 3, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, those items are approved. 6G, this is the time and place for a public hearing to consider the fiber optic interconnect Orange Route Phase 1 initiated by the city of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
April 23rd, 2021 in the Des Moines Register.
Have we received any written comments?
None, Your Honor.
All right, now be the time for anyone in the audience that would like to address the city council on item 6G. Okay. Seeing and hearing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. We have two resolutions and a motion which we can take together.
Move approval.
Second.
Sure. Second. Any other questions or comments? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right,
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Those items are approved. 6H, this is the time and place for a public hearing to consider the 2020 asphalt trail renovation initiated by the city of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
April 23rd, 2021, in the Des Moines Register.
Have we received any written comments?
None, Your Honor.
Right, now would be the time for anyone in the audience who would like to address the council on item 6H. Okay, seeing and hearing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Again, we have two resolutions and a motion which we can take together, and there are no outstanding issues.
Move approval.
Questions or comments? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? Those items are approved. Last public hearing tonight, 6I. This is the time and place for a public hearing to consider the Digital Enterprise 2021 Multifamily and Non-Residential Drops Phase 1, initiated by the city of West Des Moines. Ryan, would you please read the date the notice was published?
April 23rd, 2021, in the Des Moines Register.
Have we received any written comments?
None, Your Honor.
Right, now would be the time for anyone in the audience who would like to address the city council on item 6I. Seeing no one and hearing no one, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Again, we have two resolutions and a motion which we can take together.
Move for approval.
second.
Questions or comments? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions?
Yes.
Yes, Matt.
Yep,
That
based
item
on
is
all the
approved.
other ones.
Okay. And I guess this is another example. I mean, the engineering estimate was $168,000 and the low bid was roughly $92,000 or $93,000. So it shows that these bids are coming in well below.
Nice to see Valley High School in there too.
Yep.
That's always exciting.
That's true, but I just hope that they didn't leave a lot on the table and come back for change orders, Brian. So again, we need to stay on top of that.
Item 7, new business, one item tonight. 7A, amendment to City Code Title II, Boards and Commissions, Chapter 2, Board of Adjustment, modify regulations pertaining to zoning and exceptions for accessory structures in the front yard. City initiated, this is an ordinance for the first reading. There are no outstanding issues.
Move consideration of the first reading.
Second.
Any questions or comments? See, this came through development and planning, and I guess another big thank you for the staff, because this lowers the threshold for which a resident needs to prove the right to receive this from the Board of Adjustment. And as we all know, I mean, if someone doesn't, I mean, the Board of Adjustment issues don't go to planning and zoning, they don't come to city council, and if someone's not happy, they have to go to district court. So these are pretty significant things to manage through, so we appreciate the efforts to make the right standard applicable to the improvements that our residents are asking to make to their property.
Absolutely.
Okay, all in favor of the first reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Ryan?
5 yes, an ordinance amending the city code of the city of West Des Moines, Iowa, 2019, Title II, Boards and Commissions, Chapter 2, Board of Adjustment, pertaining to zoning and exceptions for accessory structures in the front yard.
Move approval of the first reading.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? First reading's approved. Item 8, receive, file, and/or refer Cole Prevost resigning from Bicycle Advisory Commission. Tonight, we also appointed his replacement, Dr. Herwig. Item 9, other matters. Item 9A, South Grand Prairie Parkway, Stagecoach Drive to Mill Civic Parkway. City initiated. Here's a resolution to award the contract. So I'm not sure who's going to present that, but I didn't.
I think it was just the project scope was revised to include what the city was temporary items taking over the process.
Okay,
And there was this adjustment.
just an adjustment. Okay, so
Why did this fall under other matters rather than,
Well, I can answer, it would have probably been old business, but it was put at the end of the agenda because the bonds were under public hearings and it needed to be a contract awarded after the approval of those bonds.
okay.
okay.
All right, makes sense. All right, so I need a motion for approval of 9A.
Move approval.
Second.
Any other questions or comments? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, that item's approved. I don't believe Jamie has any update unless someone has a legislative question for her. Okay. We will formally adjourn the city council meeting and reconvene into our workshop for the Valley Junction Historic Properties and Context. And I know it'll take a few minutes maybe to get the presentation ready. So why don't we take a 5-minute recess and come back at 6:35?
Yeah. No, I've never had a scooter.
I know a lot of the material got sent out early to people, but to go through some history on some of these issues, there'll be a recommendation at the end of the presentation. And then what I'd like to do is open it up for public comment on the recommendation, and essentially, without stealing Linda's thunder, just so you can keep it in mind as you look at this, I think the recommendation staff's going to have is to reduce the moratorium area, to limit it to the historic business district, to hire a consultant to look at the buildings in the historic business district to determine which ones are historically significant, and then to come up with some architectural suggestions on any renovations to any buildings in the historic business district. And then as a separate meeting, we've had a number of analysis and experts look at the whole parking situation. I can recall having a big workshop over in the school district building on parking in Valley Junction. So we've asked the staff to pull back together all the historical studies that have been done on parking in Valley Junction and hire a consultant to update that parking analysis. And then we'll have a separate workshop on parking, but we want to make sure that we gather all the work that we've done in the past and get it updated so people have an understanding of what the current parking situation is in light of the potential for redevelopment in Valley Junction. So we're going to kind of take it in two steps if we can, because there's a lot to get our arms around. And public comment, I'd like to ask people to wait, and if they want to speak, let's wait until after the presentation. We want you to come up so everybody can hear you. Please try to refrain from sharing from the audience. I know sometimes that's hard to do, but we're going to ask you to do that, not do that tonight.
Desktop.
Usually it's easier to do from the desktop.
Yeah, all right. I can't see it on this. There we go.
Okay,
We're ready.
you're on, Linda.
Okay. May I?
Yep.
First of all, I'm Linda Schimmel. I'm the development coordinator for the city, and I want to thank both council and everybody who's joining us tonight. I know it takes time and energy to get here, and I appreciate this. Really, what we want to hear tonight is we want to hear from the community. My goals are to answer any questions, correct any misinformation, and really use this time to gather the information about what the community wants. Now, we've already pushed out information, and I'll step through that real quick to make sure that nobody has any questions on that. But then our intent is to go into a little deeper dive on what we've already pushed out, talk a little bit more about what we're hearing, and then have next steps for both the city and for the residents. With that, obviously, we'll be continuing on, but I think this is the good first step to get the information that we need to make a good decision as we move forward. So this is kind of what I already touched on. I'm going to go through these first slides real quick just to make sure that everybody's got time to answer questions. One of the things that we were asked is to push out the information about basically all the plans, studies, information that apply to this area. So what we did is we compiled a list. We also posted that on the website underneath the workshop on the calendar, just so there's one source and people didn't have to keep on hunting and pecking for this stuff. And then listed a couple other historic resources that we use as we start looking at what would be the opportunities for the district and what are kind of the best practices. The other big question was, when we decided the historic district, one of the things that we noted is that there's contributing properties that are designated in that district and non-contributing. People wanted to know what the difference was. So we include a quick summary about why the district was set up, what its intent was, and then what a non-contributing property meant.
Linda, who determined if it was contributing or non-contributing? That was this Mr. Jim
Jacobson?
Jacobson, correct?
Yes. And so what
Based off of the federal guidelines, I'm taking it?
So some of it was what they determined was the intent of the district. And so the intent of the district was really to touch on the commercial areas of the district within the eras that they felt were the most significant as far as development, which is really the turn of the century and then the mid-century period. And with that, when they looked at those properties, there's also, does that have enough historic context existing? Or is that been destroyed or covered up? So those are the things that they're looking at in those contributing properties. So there are some commercial properties there that have either been remodeled or covered up to the point where it would be difficult to restore them back. There are properties there that were residential in character in the district, and so they weren't included as contributing property. And then there's ones that were constructed outside those eras.
Okay.
And then we touched on a couple aspects of historic properties. Really, there's kind of different ways to look at a property, and we wanted to touch on all of them. Everything from the people who live and work in those buildings, what they think, to what historic standards are. And as we take that deeper dive, we'll talk about this in a little more detail. But really, there's a couple different levels. Local communities in the state also have the ability to do that. They can designate historic properties. This is an important point I wanted to get across. There are different projects that happen within a district, and we have to treat them differently. Preservation is kind of the one end of the scale, and that's what we would expect, like, for instance, at the Jordan House, where we really want to preserve the history of that structure. And then on the way other side are infill. And infill is new construction within a historic district. One thing that we want to do is when we tell the story of the district is if the building was constructed, brand new building constructed, it should look like the era it was constructed. It shouldn't look like it was built in the 50s or built around the turn of the century. That does not mean it can't be compatible with the district. It needs to look appropriate. It needs to be basically a building that doesn't take away from the historic district. So there's ways to enable that without letting it tell the story that was built in this era. And then setting expectations and regulation. Again, there's two ends of the scale. One is advisory, where we illustrate or educate or encourage people to do something in the preservation world. The other end is regulatory. And really, we will see a mix of these approaches. Some work better in other areas, and some work better with other projects. So I'll just skip through these real quick. This is kind of going into all the details about the approaches here. And I apologize. Of course, I have a tickle in my throat. So that kind of brings us to our point in our discussion here. What I want to do is encourage this public input. Want to hear from the neighborhood. Want everybody to allow everybody else their time to speak and share their thoughts. Kind of as with other council meetings, if we keep on hearing repeating information, maybe you pass and let somebody else talk. But I'm also here as a resource. So as questions come up, or people are wondering if this is true or this isn't true, I will try to answer all those questions. Then we'll kind of move into some of those deeper dives, answer the questions on historic or regulatory issues. We want to walk out of this room having a good idea of where we want to be with the moratorium. And then we also want to talk about what our next steps are. So with that.
Linda, before you go on, could you just tell me, the guy that did the whether a building is historic or not, is Jim Jacobs, you said? And
Yes.
who does Jim Jacobs work for? Is it Department of Cultural Affairs? Is it some historical place? Who is this guy?
He's an independent consultant, historic consultant.
Does
He was
do work
retained.
for the National Register of Historic Places typically, or, I mean, how did we find this guy?
Well, I have his contact information, but yes, he's basically a consultant, just like any other consultant the city would hire.
Was he hired by the foundation or the city?
I believe it's an
Junction
effort by the foundation in conjunction with
thought.
Main Street.
Okay.
When did that happen?
2017 is when the register accepted the application.
Meaning he did an analysis and then submitted the application or applied to do an analysis?
So he was retained prior to 2017, did the analysis, did the research, kind of compiled his findings, put that together in what they call a record. The record is pretty extensive, and that kind of goes through the intent, it goes through all the properties, what he found, the history, architecture, et cetera, and then his recommendations on how to define that particular district and what's contributing and not contributing.
And did that stem from the master plan from September of 2016 that was shared? Was that something that grew out of that?
Not to my knowledge, but I wasn't really involved with that.
Okay.
So his recommendations and analysis, who got to see that before it was adopted? In other words, did the foundation, did people in Valley Junction get a chance to go through the consultant's report, his analysis of the buildings, his recommendation on which ones were significant and not?
To be honest, I wasn't part of that, so I don't know who was pulled in.
Okay.
If that was just, foundation in Main Street. But really, the basis for his decisions are in the report. So a lot of the why did you do this, or why was this important and this not important, are listed in the report. It's more of a factual listing than it was, I think this building is better than the other building.
So if the recommendation is to hire a consultant to take a look at the buildings again, would we give assuming we do that, would we give that consultant that prior report, and what kind of parameters would we give the new consultant to do the evaluation? In other words, it's like the art committee. I mean, anybody who looks at a building, they could say, well, it's not significant. Somebody else could say, well, yes, it is. So, I mean, how do you come up with objective criteria so that you can make an intelligent decision on which buildings are significant and which ones aren't?
Well, again, I think the key will be setting the parameters. And I don't expect the deliverable for this next step to be a historic record nomination.
Okay.
It really is going to be guidance and regulatory information.
Okay.
And what we're trying to do is the same as we do with other districts in the city. We're setting that that precedent, what we think is important as a community, what buildings we feel are setting the stage for further development, what buildings, if you move forward, this is an important building, we want to retain it. And so this is how we're going to work with you to retain that. This is a building that really isn't significant to our community, although we hate losing existing buildings. This may be an appropriate infill for that site. So it's really going to, the scope and what it does is going to be totally different than that report.
And as a part of the recommendation, I'm going to make sure I understand. Okay, so the recommendation is to limit it to the historic business district, hire a consultant, come up with the criteria to evaluate the buildings within that district, and then further recommendations on architectural suggestions for anybody that may want to improve those buildings. That's the recommendation, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's really not only going to be recommendations to somebody who wants to preserve or rehab that building. They're going to be regulatory aspects of it. We want to keep in mind that these need to be balanced and recognize constraints. We heard a lot about, well, I don't want to have somebody tell somebody you have to do this certain window and it costs 3 times as much.
Right.
I mean, we really want to acknowledge the fact that that is not what the city wants.
Okay.
What we want to do is provide our best guidance,
Okay.
but a lot of the concerns, especially about building height, mass, uses, those will have to be regulatory. And if we want to protect buildings, that will have to be regulatory.
Okay.
The other stuff can be advisory or incentives or kind of a whole library of things we could do.
Yeah, and it seems like the incentives ought to follow after we get that done, because if the regulatory drives the costs up so high that no one can afford to renovate them, then we need to come up with incentives that help support the financial aspects of that. Otherwise, we're not going to get any redevelopment.
Yeah, and so we're hoping we'll have a really good package of all those aspects.
And could the consultant not only help determine the significant buildings, but also suggestions on the regulatory guidelines that we would adopt as a part of protecting those buildings?
Right, they could make suggestions. Obviously, we would have to go through the regular adoption process.
Right.
But they would say, these are important things to do as a regulatory action.
So if we were to do that, then what we could share with the residents and the business owners is once the consultant's done with his or her project, then we can go through the report and people can make comments. In other words, if there's a building down there that the consultant doesn't think is worth saving and people feel like it is, they'll have a chance to express that and why, correct?
Yes. Now, that mechanism, I'm not sure what it looks like yet. Whether that's through our regular review process or if it's part of the adoption process, we'll need to do some work on that. We need to recognize not only kind of the structural obsolescence of a building, but the functional obsolescence of a building.
But if we renew the moratorium and we limit it to the historic business district, then no one, until we get this solved, no one can come in and demo or substantially demo any building in the district. In other words, we're going to protect them all until we get through this process.
Yeah, the moratorium is really set up the way you want it. And if you want to go forward with the fact that nobody can demo and nobody can do exterior alterations, then that's what we can move forward with. We do want to make sure that we, code issues or interior things, we want to make sure that still moves forward.
Right.
But really, that moratorium can be anything that you want to see. And there's a couple options on how to alter that boundary. And so we'll talk about that a little bit too, the pros and cons of those options.
Okay, so let's talk about the boundary now too, because what I'd like to do is get out all your thoughts on this and then open it up for public comment so that we can hear from the residents on the recommendations and the boundaries we put around those recommendations. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done, but if we can agree on where we're putting the fence, then I think people are going to be a little bit more comfortable on working through the process.
Real quick, before you do that, just one thing. So this Jim Jacobs, I mean, is there somebody that's like renowned expert in this area? Is there somebody that the National Register of Historic Places uses? Do they use Jim? I mean, the person that we go out, I don't want there to be any question that this person knows what they're doing, has expertise in it, and has gone through and checked everything off. Because I don't know Jim Jacobs from Adam Jacobs.
Right.
I have no idea who Jim is. I want to make sure we use somebody reputable that people can trust when the person comes through. And I'm assuming that when this individual comes through, it's going to be on some pretty technical aspects of these buildings, right? It's going to be looking at the historic nature of it, the foundation, has it been changed, has it been altered? There's going to be certain things they're checking off. It's not just some kind of, eyeballing and going, yeah, this looks pretty old.
I wouldn't say they would, for our purposes, they wouldn't go to that level.
Okay.
What they may say is there are aspects of the building that need to be explored further. And then if the owner wants to proceed, they may get somebody in there to really look at the foundation, really look at the structural aspects, and really look at the functional aspects of it. If we did that with every building, we would be done in 5 years. It would be too intensive. What we want to do is kind of set that criteria so that everybody plays with the same rules, everybody's understanding the expectations. But there may be buildings that need further study.
But if we're setting the criteria, then everybody out here is going to have input before we even go forward with that.
Right.
Right.
And so when we hire consultants, we hire them on a qualifications-based selection process. So that's one of the first things we ask is, what are your qualifications to do this type of work? And one of the things we wanted to do is kind of do this as a listening session rather than having recommendations, is once we hear back, we kind of know who we're looking for. We need to do a process to get you some numbers on opportunity costs for this consultant. So, we've got some homework there. So we're looking at people who are qualified to do this, and then we need to know time and money for that.
But Linda, with this though, I mean, I think we're looking at two different pieces of this puzzle. One, what Jim Jacobson did was for the National Registry of Historic Places. That's why they had to have basically the exact same structure that was built in 18 whatever. Okay, in this case, if we go take that a step backwards, I guess, in your one slide, you say that local determination of historic significance. So if we decide that in this boundary, all of in the historic Valley Junction business district, all of these properties are of historic significance to the city of West Des Moines, is a different level of criteria than what it would be for the National Registry of Historic Places.
Correct. And local designation is the only thing that you can do as a city to regulate. We
Right.
can't regulate the national designation. We can determine that, but we have to remember when we regulate, we need to have a basis, that nexus. If we're saying you can't tear down this building or you can't alter this building, we kind of have to have that third-party tested conversation about what's important about this building. And that's where the National Register provides that information. Not to say they can't be changed or you can't put other aspects in there. But really, if I'm going to tell somebody that their building is special and they have limited abilities to do something with it, I need to have that reason.
Otherwise, you're interfering with their property rights.
You're picking and choosing.
arbitrarily.
Well, that's kind of what I was going with. I was thinking that the consultant's going to do kind of the technical aspects and is this historic, is it not? And then if the people disagree and, oh, this is really historic, let me tell you why, then
Yeah.
they can have the input and we could
Yeah.
take a
And
look at it again.
we have the
but I'm-
flexibility to do that. But again, we really need to have the reason for it.
Well, typically, you'd build in your consultant's report that they're going to meet with people and get their input.
Well,
on something like
yeah,
this.
and it's going to be not only the people who own the buildings, but the people who are part of the community.
Right.
And that's the key thing here is we want to hear what the community has to say about it. We're not going to be able to make everybody happy, but it's very important to be part of that process.
So again, help us understand the suggestion on the historic business district that let's confine all this additional work and analysis just to that boundary.
So,
Linda, one last thing really quick. I just, we have reports from 93, 99, 2016. We have this booklet. Brenda, if you're in here, thanks for letting me look through this. This 145-page document that Jim prepared and submitted, it feels fairly exhaustive. Are we considering it the exhaustive, it's originally researched, it's not based on anything prior that the city did?
I see this as a tool for what we're going
Yes.
to do, but I don't see our action to be this detailed for the entire Valley Junction district.
Okay, thank you. Continue.
I'm sorry. I know we're not moving fast here, but I'm trying to understand the significance. In my mind, I got to have a baseline, and it sounds like we're trying to establish a baseline of what properties qualify and what don't. And I see that we've got this application that Councilman Trevelyan had pointed to and that we're all talking about Jim Jacobs submitted sometime, 145 pages here.
Mm-hmm.
Does that have any legal significance? Or is that just kind of, hey, one person's opinion?
I wouldn't say it's opinion, it's a scientific research.
Okay.
And
So
so it's based on fact, it's not an opinion. And they're taking the criteria that they get from the Secretary of Interior's office.
Yep.
And what he's looking at, he had the ability on his own to determine what the district was going to represent. And he chose commercial properties. He chose the two areas that were the most active in development, which were right around the turn of the century and in mid-century.
So are the properties identified in this report on the National Register of Historic Places that are part of this registration form you submitted?
Nothing in that district, by being in that district, is on the National Register. If I had a building in that district, I would have to go and put my separate application in. Now, we happen to have a building or two in there that are in the district, but by just being in that district does not put you on the National Register.
Is the district itself recognized as a result of this
Yes.
form? Okay.
Yes, the district itself is, and the district's purpose is more all the properties and the context versus a singular building.
Okay.
And, and the concept is as we move forward, we have different contexts within Valley Junction. We need to recognize those and do appropriate decisions with that. And we need to kind of determine where does that line stop? How far are we going to move with this? If we can keep going, we keep on finding more historic buildings. But what's important to the city as this is the birthplace of the city?
Does that district, now that it's registered with the United States Department of the Interior under the National Park Service, have a legal effect on what we do as a city?
No,
Okay. What
no, you
is the
cannot regulate them.
significance, if any?
It's an honorary designation, basically.
Okay.
But with this, this summary he put, well, I guess not summary, report he put together for the National Registry of Historic Places registration form, a property could then, off of this, go apply, right?
Right.
Because it's been.
Right.
Okay.
And properties outside the district could apply.
But at the same time, again, going back to windows, I know when Al Schroeder owned the former Reiner Brother Plumbing Building, which was the railroad repair shop, he did not get historic tax credits because the windows he put at the very top were not character for when the building was built.
Actually, it was more than just that.
But okay, but again, the general appearance of that building to the average person really didn't change that much. And that's where I'm coming from with a lot of, with these buildings down in Valley Junction. Maybe it's been changed, and what I'm going to use is what's now the St. Kilda's restaurant there at 5th and Walnut. Maybe from when that building was built, there's been things changed and whatnot, but the overall building of what the majority of the longtime residents of West Des Moines remember, that building's the same as it's always been. And so that's why I like this part about being able to have local designation, because even though it doesn't qualify for the National Registry of Historic Places, it's still got historical significance to the residents of West Des Moines Valley Junction.
There's two approaches here that we'll talk about. One of the things with the building that was Mr. Schroeder's is that there was existing historic material and details that he removed when he redid the windows. And that's kind of the main concern, is that everything that's historic should stay historic. You should not damage or remove it. So that was the clerestory windows actually were what we consider reversible, meaning the original frame and structure in there wasn't really damaged, or he didn't damage it before somebody else did. So that could be easily reversed and restored to the original historic context. The windows themselves on the main level, there was damage to the original historic fabric. Now, everybody has the ability to return that, and if they had found enough salvage brick, they could have made that mistake go away. So it's not the end, but that's the key element when we're talking about historic buildings, is any existing historic fabric should not be damaged.
But to the point that we were talking about before, we've got to have this criteria though too, because, and keep in mind, none of us sitting up here own any of these buildings. But whatever we end up coming up with, or this consultant comes up with, to your point, they come up and they say, no, sorry, it's not historic. It may have been before, and everybody else says, oh, this building is absolutely historic, and therefore the city council should make it such that it's protected and nobody does anything to it. What happens? The building owner doesn't agree with it. They want to do something to the building. We've said they can't. They sue us. We don't have any leg to stand on.
Right. And that's why you have to be careful in that designation. If we say this building is protected, you have to have the basis. Why is it important to the city? And that's how we're going to protect it.
Okay.
And so, things like the Winchester, which was just restored. We worked with the developer and with their design team. For instance, the storefront, but it is not historic storefront. But they added it in a way that was easily reversible. So someone can come somewhere down the line, or the owner is there now, can restore that to an original historic storefront. And there's no harm, no foul. When they put that storefront in, they didn't damage any of the original historic fabric, the historic brick. So that is when we start reusing these buildings and make them work for modern uses, that's a key element, that we keep that historic fabric, but if there's things that have to function for energy efficiency or something like that, we can make them easily reversible, then we're still maintaining that historic fabric.
But again, that's to keep it on the National Registry of Historic Places.
Well, and that's really the criteria we want to use as we apply it here too. I mean, because that's that basis, that nexus, is if it's important to us, we want to preserve what's historic. And each owner can make that decision on their own right now. But if we put regulation in place to protect that building, it will be more difficult. One of the things I'm going to propose is that the owner still has the ability to come to the council and say, listen, I can't protect this fabric, or I can't keep this building because of X, Y, and Z. And then the council can say, yeah, you got a point, or no, you really need to keep this.
Well, and right now, we've got an economic development program that goes towards helping rehabilitate, helping invest down there, but we may not have this program forever either. So you talk about, Mayor, to your point, and I totally agree with it, if we are going to require, you know, keeping the historic nature and those things, we need to, you know, be willing to put our money where our mouth is and have better incentives for these buildings. But at some point in time, we may not have incentives down there. This wasn't a thing that was meant to be long-term forever. And so all of a sudden now there are no city incentives, but they do have the requirements on those buildings.
Right.
And that person cannot.
And that's where the National Register comes in. A lot of state funding and federal funding requires you to follow Secretary of Interior's
Right.
requirements. And so that is a funding source. And that is hopefully an incentive to put your building on the register. As you're saying, I'm willing to protect this building, and you have incentives to help me do that.
Those are federal incentives?
Federal and any federal flow through state
It's
funding.
basically the state historic rehabilitation tax credits and the federal tax credits that go with it.
For instance, I worked on 4 different city buildings down Valley Junction. 3 of them were considered historic properties. They're not on the register, but when I talked to SHPO, they said, yes, they would qualify. So we didn't go through the process, but we made a decision that when we did those changes, we respected the historic fabric of the building, and anything that went up was historically accurate.
Okay. To keep the future open for such incentives.
Right, yeah, that leaves all of our options open.
How many times have places down at Valley Junction earned those federal incentives? Or has it happened at all? Is it common? Is it
The majority of
uncommon?
the incentives have come for the historic city hall building.
Okay.
And that's one of the 2 buildings in this district that are on the register right now.
Well, and to give you some magnitude, we spent over $1 million to restore that building. Nobody in the private sector could ever afford to do that.
But again, that was a key building for us to
Right.
tell the story.
And we recognized it, but that just gives you some idea of what you could get into if you overregulate this. People are going to say, I can't do it, I'll just let it fall down because I can't afford to do anything to
Right,
it.
and we have to be mindful of that, and that's where
Right.
some of those tools about alternative means and methods and allowing kind of some incentives as far as regulation and zoning, if they're investing in it. So there's a lot of tools in the toolkit. We just got to figure out what's right for us.
Okay, so getting back to the
Moratorium.
boundary.
So the area,
Yep,
there's really kind of 3 options. Remain as is, was defined April 5th. Modify the boundary to the Valley Junction Historic Business District, which is staff's recommendation, and that's really anything that's zoned that. And I've got a map if you want to see that later. And then, or modify the boundary to the Valley Junction Commercial Historic District, which is really just the 100 and 200 block. There's a little creep. The key there is that will not protect the buildings that are under the current redevelopment pressure. Whether they're significant and worth keeping, we don't know that yet. But they're not reaching into the 300 and the 400 and the 500 block or some of the edges, the 4th and 6th Street.
why don't you show us the boundary of the Valley Junction Historic Business District? Because I think the concern last time on 4th to 6th Street is you're picking up houses.
Right.
And that's going to be a problem for people, and I don't think we want to do that. I think we overshot just to make sure we were comfortable with where we were going in a month.
Right, and that was staff's concern, is that
Right.
we were reaching into the residential areas. So this would be the footprint of what we're recommending, the dark dotted line there.
So then, based on that boundary, the recommendation would be to continue the existing moratorium that would preclude any demolition or significant structural alterations to any buildings within that boundary until we can get all these issues sorted out.
Correct.
Okay. And in order to sort them out, the suggestion is to hire a consultant, get input, and have the consultant come back with an analysis on all the buildings in there, And then make sure, I guess, Dick, from a legal standpoint, that if we're gonna put criteria on these buildings, it needs to be legally supportive so that we don't have someone saying that you're interfering with my property rights. And then we need to come up with, make sure we've got the right incentive plans in place to help people with these buildings cover some of the additional costs that they're gonna have to incur by protecting the historic nature of the building.
And that's one thing that we're recommending is that any kind of incentive programs be paused for now until we get this information, and then we have the ability to really kind of tailor those to what we're trying to incentivize here.
And we would pause those incentive programs within the boundary that we agreed to.
Correct.
Okay,
And it's gotta be a reasonable duration too, we have to remember that, so
Right.
take too much time.
And that's what we're hoping we can report back, if not the next council meeting shortly after that, with what we anticipate for time frame.
okay. All right, so why don't we,
And
Okay.
can we, there are exemptions here, can we highlight what those, so we're all on the same page about the exemptions?
Okay, so the
From
three
this-
properties that are, I guess, in progress
Yeah.
are 301 and 304 Fifth Street. They already submitted their planning application. They're also going through the incentive program review right now. Those will be buildings that are exempted from this moratorium. 315 Fifth Street proceeded with their demolition permit and their building permit prior to April 5th. So they're also exempted from this.
so these are the three programs that are exempted from the original moratorium.
Right.
Right,
I don't know how you go back and
correct. Yeah.
change that now, but,
Right.
so we just want to make sure that people understand, these are not new programs. These are the three that we talked about a month ago.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
And they would still be subject to existing review requirements.
Yes.
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 So, going back to the moratorium, so again, staff's recommendation was follow the Valley Junction Historic Business District. Continue the exemptions on the properties that we just talked about. Time frame is basically until we figure out where we need to be as far as studying the area, coming up with recommendations on regulation or guidelines and incentives. And then, as I mentioned, suspending the incentive programs until we have a good idea of what we want to incentivize. Now, that doesn't have to be part of the moratorium, it can be a separate action.
But, and yeah, and I don't know why anybody would apply for incentives when they're in the boundary, because we're not sure what we can allow them to have anyway. And you're suggesting, Linda, that in 2 weeks at the next council meeting, you maybe could have a better timeline for people to say, we think we can get a consultant hired by this date, the report done by this date with a recommendation by this date, so people know what the time frame is going to be, or at least what we want to try to hold to?
We hope to. 2 weeks is gonna be a scramble to get all that information there,
Okay.
but we want to at least report out
Okay.
to you so you know where we're at. And hopefully we'll have those dates. If not, as
Okay.
soon as we know them, we'll let you know.
Okay.
And then on this, I'm understanding where we're going. Is there going to be some sort of pressure relief valve, so to speak, in the event that there's a problem and somebody needs to replace some sort of modification there? They can bring it to the council?
Either that, or, I mean, if the moratorium is no demolition and no structural changes, then it seems like it frees them up to be able to do things internally. As long as they're not changing the structure of the building in any way, it seems like they can go ahead and do whatever they may need to do inside the building.
Okay. I may
Roof repairs
suggest
or whatever would be allowed.
They can do that.
obviously, Yes.
Okay.
I mean, you got to do maintenance issues.
Yep.
It's just, I'm not changing the exterior and I'm not bulldozing to build a new.
Yep, some storm comes through and blows out all the windows, or
Yes, it's
somebody.
got to be repaired.
I would be leery about limiting it to just structural, because structural could be something that you need to replace or deal with immediately. I would say exterior changes, because what we don't want to do is have a building fall down if they find out the roof's starting to cave
Right.
in. Right, so I would not.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah,
Structural,
structural and roof and stuff would be more of a maintenance
Yeah,
issue
so-
rather
But
than I'm
Exterior-
changing.
Exterior alterations, in other words, you're
Yeah.
changing
The
building.
appearance.
Right,
Right, but they want to change the facade or something like that, they cannot do that,
right.
right?
Okay.
Okay, and keep in mind, if we think there's a big issue or there's a specific building, we could bring this moratorium back and discuss it.
Right.
And you always have the ability to modify it.
Right. Okay, why don't we take a breath and then open it up to public comment. And again, happy to hear anybody that wants to share. Make sure you come up here, give us your name and address. Try not to repeat what other people have said. And it'd be helpful if you'd share your thoughts on kind of the parameters of at least this recommendation, because it seems like it protects what everyone was concerned about until we can get a deeper dive and a better understanding of those buildings.
And I would ask a favor, I've got a clipboard right over here. If you want to be on our contact list about this issue, please go ahead and leave your information here. I do have some people's information.
So I'm going to start with people that are physically in the council chambers, and we'll take comment from them. And then once we've concluded that, then I'm happy to open it up to anybody that may be on the phone that wants to provide public comment. So let's start with the people that are physically present in the council chambers. Whoever would like to share their thoughts with the council on this recommendation, please come on up. And is there make sure there's a microphone there so everyone can hear?
That bar is.
Yeah.
Okay.
The two red lights.
Okay, I'm speaking from here.
Yep.
Yes.
Just that bar is the microphone.
Okay. It has a red light, is that okay? That means stop. Okay. Name and all that?
Yes.
Name and
Okay.
address.
Jan Fleming, 1800 Grand Avenue in West Des Moines. Anything else? Okay. Now, I maybe have missed a beginning lump on this, but as I'm thinking about it, would it be helpful to set a definite period, year-wise, that this is what the historic Valley Junction is the period of blah, 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 blah. It would give some parameters. And then also, something to unify all the buildings, maybe most of them as they are. I'm thinking about Williamsburg. Maybe we need to put lace curtains in each store. And maybe some horses you tie your car up to when you park or something. But the things that were going on in that period of time would give us, I would think, some basic thinking about what we want to do. And then I was thinking about, look what Pella has done. Every building in town now has a structure for Holland, right? Okay, so if there's some authentic structure that could be added on top or on the front of the buildings as they are to just bring up that period, it would seem to me it would give us some parameters to work with.
Thanks, Jane.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
Thank you, Jan.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
My name's Nathan Hahn, 216 7th Street. I got some bullet points to go over on behalf of the Neighborhood Association.
Okay.
Our first one is, we were talking about the master plan. We put a lot of money in it. It seems like we kind of back shelved it. There's a lot of great ideas in there. I think we need to readdress it. Maybe that's something we can do as a group. Just kind of give us a vision of where we're going with stuff. And then Valley Junction has its own zoning requirements, setbacks. I think we need to look at future stuff like height requirements and stuff like that. As new buildings are going to go up, we understand some of this is going to change, but what are we going to set that standard to be? Is bricks, using brickwork, stuff like that. And then we kind of already talked about incentives to help with this, but we kind of want to set a standard per se, what we want these buildings to somewhat look like as we're changing. Some concerns have come up already with this new building and the parking issues we got there. Multiple residents have complained about almost being hit at that intersection at 5th and Walnut. So we see concerns there. I know we said we'd talk about parking later, with all respect. But could we do a 4-way intersection there to help with this? Could we put a compact car parking in a couple lanes there so people can see around that corner, because the parking comes all the way up the corner and it's a blind spot?
And I think we brought that up at the last Valley Junction neighborhood meeting, and I think Jim Barrett was going to be looking into it. So hopefully they're already looking at that, but, sorry.
So, thank you,
Yeah.
I appreciate it. So, yeah, it was just a concern that multiple people have talked about, just want you guys to be aware of. And as we keep putting more up, it's just gonna become a bigger issue. You know, we gotta think about parking. Eventually, are we gonna go to overnight parking there as these people move in? So that's concerns too, because it's a restricted time zone parking. So, just stuff to think about. Programs to repair current businesses, residential properties, the TIF money that's going out. Do we got transparency of where this money is actually going? I mean, it's taxpayer money at the end of the day. We should have some transparency.
Well, there's a committee that reviews every one of these programs, the Citizens Committee that reviews them all and makes recommendations on who gets incentives.
That's fine. We just want to see where the money is being spent. I mean, as a taxpayer, we should be.
Yeah, we have all of that.
But at
That's
this,
fine. It's just-
but at this time, the upper story housing fund is out of money, and we've talked about what to do with the remaining TIF money, and I threw out there a few months ago that I think we need to look at single-family
Yep.
houses, using the money for that, and single-family owner-occupied and single-family rentals as well, because, you know, we've got to keep that housing stock
Right.
down there as well.
So we've gotten our CDBG plan for FY '22, as I mentioned tonight, a couple $100,000 that goes towards that. I'm not sure that's the right amount, given the fact that we've had that program before, and it didn't work. So that will be coming before the council very soon for a vote, and we need to have a discussion on that. And we just recently put, I think, $100,000 into rehabbing existing homes. And we also put about $200,000 every year into the Neighborhood Finance Corp program that also rehabs homes. So we've put a record amount into rehabbing single-family homes, but we can continue to look at putting more.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah. And I think, and I really appreciate you bringing that up because, you know, maybe there is a lack of us communicating the investment that is made into some of these other development type projects that are really important to the folks in Valley Junction. So I see a need to really keep sharing because if they don't come to the meetings, they don't really get that information available. But we need to be shouting that out because some of the kinds of things that were just shared are investments in other kind of development projects that folks are very interested in and the amount that's being invested. So we need to do a better job of sharing that information so that folks see it, because I don't think we're doing that.
Thank you. Appreciate that. So yeah, that's a big one for us is just, we want to invest in our properties down there too. It's lower income down there than the average area. Sorry. So we had some concerns of the 500 block of 5th Street that is is zoned commercial, sorry. And a lot of residents would see that, like to see that zone back to residential. I don't know if you guys have heard that. There's concerns of houses being torn down there too. So trying to get it out of that so that can't be done. I don't know if any of you guys have heard that or not, but
I've heard from some of the residents up there that say, yes, they want that to go back to.
higher tax rates on them and stuff
family.
like that. And then you guys are talking about trying to narrow this down on this, you know, the area we're looking at, but there's a lot of stuff we do need to look at outside of the 5th Street block. There's other historical properties we need to take a full look at. Ashworth House, the old telephone exchange right by Phoenix, the Roadhouse Motel, you know, stuff like that we need to really look at because it is contributing to our community. I mean, like the old telephone building, that was our first telephone building, but it's not classified historical and we haven't even looked at it because that is between 7th and 6th Street. That's out of the 6th to 4th Street range. So just stuff to think about on that end.
We've also got properties out in Commerce that are the same.
Yep, Commerce, that'd be another one. Where am I at? Kind of talked about the, what's relevant, what's not. We've already hit that hard. But I'd like to see, a subcommittee when this is all done and get input. I'd like to see a subcommittee of business owners on 5th Street. I'd like to see residential owners. I'd like to get somebody that is in the construction trade that's built in our community to give us some input. And when I say a subcommittee, I want to look at where we're going as a vision, what we want these buildings to look like. And I think we can all agree that we don't want to choke these people down so bad that they can't build in our community. That's not what we're trying to do. But we want to give them a template of 6 or 8 different things that say, hey, this fits in really good with our community. We want you to be here. We want you to be a resident. We want you to be a business owner here. But we just want a solid vision of where we're going with this. But I think we need to make a committee of people. That way everybody's being heard. But yeah, I mean, to kind of wrap it up, we feel like we got a small town down there. We love our community. We want to work with you guys. We want a partnership with you guys. It's not us versus you guys. We want to work together. We want to make this strong. We love our community. So.
Okay.
I don't know if you have any questions for me or?
I have a comment.
I mean, those are a lot of the same things I think we did when we created the historic plan. We
And
had
I
all
understand that.
input, and we spent a ton of money, a ton of time, a ton of input, and
I have a master plan and a lot
But to
of
his point, we've done nothing with it really.
Yeah,
So that's what they're wanting to do is just implement what
right, I
we
mean, that would
talked
be part
about.
of this next, I mean, we could bring
So-
it up as a part of the next study to say, okay, why, all right. Sorry, Renee.
Yeah, I just want to say, first of all, thank you for your thoughts, and you came prepared with suggestions and ideas, and I love that. And what you said most that I loved is that it's not us against you guys. We are here to work together
Yes.
and to do the best we can. And while there might be mistakes along the way, please know from me personally, I love the Valley Junction area. And there's probably not one person on this council, and it includes all of us, that want to truly make sure that our next steps are our best steps. And that we all care about this community where West Des Moines started. I've never seen this room as full, and I'm happy to see it because it is concerned citizens that want more voice and more understanding. But please know, and I'll speak for myself, and I could probably speak for my other city council persons, we care about this. We invest a lot in Valley Junction, maybe not in areas where it's important for everybody in this room, but a huge investment. And maybe we need to make a report on the investments that have been made in that particular area. It doesn't mean that some of the things that you've just raised, we need to take a bet. I love your idea about a committee, by the way. I love that idea. That's proactive.
Right.
That's getting more people involved in the process. But do know, as I sit here, we care about Valley Junction, and it is not an us versus you.
Right.
So please don't ever feel that way. From my perspective, and I know I've talked to other city council people, when I come to your meetings, I'm here to listen. I may not always agree, but you're important.
Right.
I ran because I want to be the voice for everybody. It doesn't mean everybody gets what they need, but you do get an ear. I promise you that. And I want to thank you for your report, and I hope that some of these ideas come to fruition. But I love what you said. We're partners. It's not you against us or us against you guys.
Yep.
Thank you for that.
Any other questions while I'm here?
I'll echo that very much. Renee, well said. And I see a lot of folks in the audience tonight that have reached out to me. I'd encourage the rest of you, to remain involved. I see Scott Hatfield back here. Scott and I served on the West Des Moines Historical Society together. We've got a very strong interest in preserving the history there. I'm also very cognizant of the costs that are associated with it.
Sure.
And so I think, to Nathan, some of your points, we need to be balanced and reasonable in our approach.
Yep.
So for me, as I mentioned earlier, it's going to be very important to have a baseline, have agreement on what the baseline is in terms of what's included, what's not included in terms of geographically. You bring up a really good point about the old telephone building, and Linda, maybe that's something in 2 weeks we can talk about after consulting with the expert, how we can draw. I don't want to have a map that's, squiggly lines and people are thinking, how did this come about? But we also need to recognize what's historic down there. So for me, I want it to be a thorough, transparent process where folks are involved. And I appreciate you being here, and I look forward to seeing where this goes.
That's all we ask, is just transparency. And that's where, like the subcommittee, if we can get get through some of this and set hard dates and put a committee together, I think it would be very beneficial, and we just work as a partnership to move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Sarah Kellenbeck, and my husband and I can't live at 602 Fifth Street. When I decided to move to Valley Junction, it was because of the flavor and the overall tempo and just the feeling that you got when you were down here, shopping, going for a hair appointment, whatever. The first thing I want to say, though, is thank you. There was a lot of discussion done before the last meeting about whether or not you would be open to the frustration that we were feeling. You have been. You all deserve kudos. This wouldn't happen in every town, whether it be in Iowa or Montana or whoever. So you guys really deserve a big thank you. I want to thank you. My biggest concern going forward is not whether or not you're going to listen to us. With the people I've talked to, many of us realize that there's going to be development down there. There are some buildings that are in kind of bad shape and some that may not be able to be saved. But moving forward, what we really hope for, many of us, not just me, but not everybody, but many of us are concerned about the look of the new buildings. And as much concern as we have, a lot of it focuses on the exteriors of the building. I think one of the things that really got people riled up was the rust look next to St. Kilda's. And going forward, if we can try to find exterior materials, they don't have to be horribly expensive, hopefully, but something that kind of blends in as opposed to sticking out. Because those of you who have been in the Des Moines area for a long time remember the big hullabaloo when Ruan built his building. And the architect from Texas didn't realize that the metal wouldn't do the same thing in the Midwest that it did in the South. So thank you again. I'm looking forward to moving forward in the process of this. I've had conversations with Nate and a lot of other people in the neighborhood. So again, thank you for listening to us.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for coming.
Hello, my name is Alexander Hall. I'm the owner of St. Kilda Restaurant. I own it with my wife. I live at 3310 Southwest 56th Street in West Des Moines, Moffat Ridge area. I would like to speak to you and give an opinion of what it's like to be someone relatively new, not only to Des Moines, but obviously to Valley Junction. I have 4 other businesses in town at the moment, all in downtown area. I looked at getting to West Des Moines as I thought it would be a great place to do business. I looked in with the herds further up, and then the more glamorous part of, I guess, of where you would think to do business in West Des Moines. But then I was brought down by the Cutler family to look at Valley Junction. My wife actually brought me to Valley Junction when I first moved from New York to the shoe repair, and I just wondered why there hadn't been a lot of development. It reminded me, I used to have restaurants in Brooklyn. It reminded me of a developing area in Brooklyn. And one day I thought maybe I'll try and open a business down there. So we walked up and down, and there wasn't a lot of spaces available. And I saw a big old brick building on the corner, and I said, that's the one. And everyone kind of looked at me crazy. Said, this is going to be too much to fix, and it's too big. It's not in where the rest of the shops are. But we took a huge gamble, and with my partner, the landlords, Tim and the Cutler family, we've I think done a fantastic job opening probably Des Moines' premier restaurant. We opened in the height of COVID. I have a $1.9 million debt on that business. It was a huge renovation. The building was completely dilapidated. It's something now that I'm extremely proud of. This business in Valley Junction does double the revenue of my restaurants downtown combined. We're now running at a profit. We hire 41 full-time employees in the business, 6 of which live in Valley Junction. If I could hire 5 more, I would, if anyone knows anyone looking for work. So I think we're an example of development that can come into the area, that can be a positive into the area, you know, I've always tried to fit in and do the best I can to make sure I assimilate with the people that are already in the area. I purposely didn't take over and do something else that was already done in the street. It was something that we worked very hard at, but I've been welcomed. West Des Moines has been a fantastic place to do business. Valley Junction has been an absolute, just fantastic place for us to do business. And through COVID, the worst time in restaurant history, this business is really robust, and we're doing very well. I do echo the cross section there is very dangerous, and you know, we have issues with that as well. Some kind of forced stop. You know, we have created a lot more traffic there with car parking, but we do have a very good mix of people that come to Valley Junction. I feel that we have brought a lot of attention back to Valley Junction, which I'm hoping is working off for the other business up the street and also for me. So, you know, I would like to come say that it's been a very positive experience coming to the area. And, you know, I wish well for the developers, as long as it's done in an appropriate manner that looks after the old buildings. You know, I went above and beyond and spent way more than I really should have on that building to make sure that we restored it and kept it you know, to make sure it looked original. And, you know, hopefully there's some more development like that keeps Valley Junction looking like Valley Junction, but it also has to move on, and we have to create jobs, and we have to pay taxes, and we have to find a nice balance. So thank you for your time.
You did a great job with that building, and I guess it's a good problem to have with the parking issues, because you've got a great restaurant down there.
Thank you, sir.
And I'm glad that, you know, people are coming there, and that you're doing as well as you are. And
Thank you.
I appreciate the
that.
fact that you did
Yep.
come to West Des Moines, Valley Junction, and locate your restaurant there.
Thank you. I
Like said,
appreciate it.
It's a phenomenal restaurant, and you did a great job with that.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
and I echo that too. And this should have been a commercial here that you just stated about really spending the extra, trying to make sure you blend in with the neighborhood.
Right.
Employing people from the neighborhood and looking for more to employ, and that your business is doing better than the ones downtown Des Moines. It's a true example of how development enriches that area.
Yes.
And we need a lot of those kind of success stories. We got to make sure things blend in, and there's some standards made and expectations about how we're not putting up any more rust buildings on that street, but buildings that, you know, blend in nicely. But this is the kind of project that I think is going to help Valley Junction draw people downtown, let them shop there, come eat there. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you for your investment in our
Thank you very
community.
much. Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Nan Earl. I live at 224 7th Street, and 2 blocks away is my business, Nan's Nummies.
Where are the cookies?
I love Valley Junction so much that I moved there. St. Kilda's is the new one. I'm getting to be an old timer. I'm starting my 33rd year. I'm not real excited about these 3-story buildings. They look so out of place in our junction. And now there's going to be one next door to me. And I'm afraid it's going to look horrible. And I wish we could have a mandate that all street level is retail. When an office moves in, it takes away a retail space, and that doesn't help any of us retail businesses down there. We've seen it with architects. I think the building that used to be dressings on 5th is going to be another office. And the things I've heard my customers say is, what is that big thing down there that's rusting? You know, things like that. It doesn't look good. It's just, I love Valley Junction. I wouldn't have my business anywhere else, and I've said that for all 33 years. I was looking at the Drake area, but somebody showed me Valley Junction, and it's a good thing. But I'm just a little scared of what's happening. I don't want to get away from the look. Customers don't like change either. They do not like it when things just totally flip-flop. So I'd like to keep the historic, in which that big apartment building is not historic looking at all. It just doesn't fit. So that's just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for making the best cookies in town. Could I could I add on? This is my first time here, and so realize I'm getting kind of mouthy for somebody who's not involved. Maybe there's a group that is working on the aesthetic side of what it would look like. I just published a book about downtown Des Moines and the capital and around Iowa, so I have some cred in that area. They mentioned the telephone company. I've been in there and watched them restore it to its original. Could we move it down closer? I don't know. Also, we've got a blacksmith and the bike shop that's on 6th Street could maybe be moved over. And then the antique automobile store on 6th. I don't know how that would fit in, but I'm back at this historical, what's going on. I have a friend who taught social studies at Valley for 30 years, and he grew up in Valley Junction, and he has railed me with so many stories. He was delivering newspapers then. Are we getting any of those people to talk about what it was like back then? What are we trying to restore, the aesthetic part? Okay, so I'll go home now. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't go home. We still want you here. Thank you for your input.
Thanks, Jan.
I'm not going to be more interesting than our neighbors. Good evening. I'm Matt Huggy, the Executive Director of the Historic Valley Junction Foundation, 137 5th Street. It's the younger Han who got to do the work tonight, but I think I'm here mostly to agree with him. I saw Patty outside of Nan's actually the other day, and we were talking out our car window, and she said, "What's going to happen at this meeting?" I said, "I don't know, but I think it's going to be okay." And I actually do. I wanted to make just a couple of comments. I have been talking about this issue a lot, and I have a little bit of other feedback that I have heard from folks in the neighborhood. First of all, with regard to Jim Jacobson, the other thing that I wanted to point out about why that was done was that the city was celebrating its 125th anniversary. Mm-hmm. And so a National Register listing for the historic downtown in West Des Moines is a very appropriate thing to do to commemorate that and really just celebrate that the city had reached that milestone in history. So an appropriate way to look at that was as a community pride thing, and a very good one. But something which I think everybody always knew that we would need to build on in the future. So it's really positive to see that happening now. I also want to, we gave out some copies. Did anybody bring your master plan with you tonight? Yeah, some people got some copies of it. We had some in a drawer. We got them out of the drawer before this meeting. That seemed like a good move. We actually continue to be very proud of the historic West Des Moines master plan, which was developed. I've had several conversations with folks who say we really looked at that as something that would take 20 years or more to fully implement. We're coming up on 5 years after that plan was approved this fall. And I do think, and we've had some conversations with city staff about bringing a presentation before council this fall at the 5-year anniversary to look through that report in some detail and celebrate some of the things that did get done. For example, the $1.6 million that was just spent on renewing the streetscape in Valley Junction was a master plan project, and that was necessary because we had folks tripping over bricks where the tops were popping off, and we don't now. And so, it's things like that which the master plan achieved, which I think it would be appropriate to take a look back at and sort of see what was done and what's left to do. When it comes to other things that go on, I kind of want to pick up on a theme that Nathan did, which is that the master plan had an implementation committee. We remain big fans of the master plan implementation committee. It is a forum between residents, the city, and business and property owners in the business district. The master plan committee has had kind of an awkward history of meeting, but we continue to think that that's a useful forum for ongoing discussion of these issues. It's something that exists today that has good representation on it. I think that often in Valley Junction, what happens is there's a lot of conversation and then things fizzle out. I think it's important to try to maintain a consistent level of conversation in the neighborhood. And we still think the Master Plan Implementation Committee is a good place periodically to come together and just review some of these bigger picture issues so that folks have confidence things are being addressed. So I'll always put a plug in for that. And then just to sort of not belabor the point, there was discussion a while ago about a larger conversation about zoning throughout not only our district, which is kind of north-south between Railroad and Vine, but also east-west along the Railroad Avenue corridor. The city has been considering things like that. We still think that's an important effort to carry forward. Not to push any one decision on it, but I have had conversations with folks particularly about looking at historic buildings in the lower, we'd call it the lower part of the neighborhood, but the more residential character in the upper part of the neighborhood. We do know that there are ongoing concerns about height of buildings and things that might be proposed. And some of those it might not be possible to address just by looking at historic buildings. So it may be necessary to keep that bigger zoning conversation going in order to answer some of the other questions that people have. And so we don't want to slack off on that larger issue. We still think that these historic preservation questions are important, but it's not the only train moving down the tracks. I made it that far without a railroad metaphor. Yeah. And then finally, I just want to emphasize that we're really proud of the development work that's been done in the neighborhood. Folks like Alex have done a tremendous job, but we do have continued urgency around some of the historic preservation needs that we have in the building. Unfortunately, water remains an issue in Valley Junction, and it's damaged roofs and caused bricks to need tuck pointing and this kind of thing. So there is still an urgent need to protect some of our historic buildings and continue to work with property owners. So, looking at that and just in the normal course of doing property work, we had surveyed property owners in our business district about if we were to offer some facade improvement program. We were approached by the Neighborhood Development Corporation to gauge interest in that, to potentially write a grant for Polk County. And we surveyed business owners and very quickly identified several tens of thousands of dollars in improvement work that property owners would complete, and were eager to have support potentially from the county. So both because we continue to have some urgent need for protecting our historic buildings, and because we have some interest in making improvements from other owners, maybe not in a historic sense, I really want to emphasize the urgency of continuing to move this forward so that we don't lose momentum that we have had on development down in the neighborhood. We need to keep things going, and so we need to really work in a very forthright way to find answers to these questions quickly. I think people have seen the volumes of study that have been completed, and we want to be moving toward a result. And I would leave it this way. We did think that when we heard about weathering steel coming to a 3-story facade in Valley Junction, that there might be questions about it. And indeed, there have been. And it's kind of funny to go down and see and hear those conversations. But I also was on the street the other night, and I saw a young couple walking by that building, and they gestured at it, and the young woman just said, keep Valley Junction weird. We can't be building all of these buildings to push the young people, push people like us out of the neighborhood. And to me, it was when I rounded the corner, I had a nice conversation with Renee after that young woman's, where'd she go? Yeah, that's what happened right before. Yes, what happened right before I came to see you was this young woman. So there is a need for continued dialogue about how the neighborhood is changing and being sensitive to the folks down there. And frankly, it's good that the city has had this dialogue, because we have to continue it. And we do need to be respectful of the many voices that we have in the Junction, and try to find the best solution. But this seems broadly like a good set of steps to take to keep that process moving. And that would just be some reflections on other conversations that I've had.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank
Thank you, Matt. Thanks for all the work that you do.
Just a couple of things.
Oh, sure.
A couple of things that you mentioned kind of speak to me. You were asking, are things being addressed within this master plan? I'm really excited about the conversation that we're going to have. You had mentioned that there have been things that have been done in the master plan, and you mentioned a couple of things. I'm looking forward to hearing more about this. I'm still relatively new on city council, and this is 2016. So there have been many things that have been done. I'm excited to hear that list.
Right.
Not from you, I'm just saying as this conversation unfolds. I'm really proud of the hundreds of thousands of dollars that we've provided to the Historic Junction Foundation that that the city council has provided. But I did want to say a personal thank you to you as well, because, I was speaking about Catherine in the chamber earlier, and when she took over, Matt, you took over right before this pandemic began too. And I know it's been an insane amount of work, and I really wanted to express my gratitude for the work that you've been doing down there, because you care deeply, and the conversations that we've had, that you've had with everybody, I just wanted to offer my gratitude for you, because it's been a really, really tough year, but we're striving to get through it, and you've done a fantastic job. So I want to thank you.
I'm grateful, Councilman. Thank you. I would respond to that quickly by saying, I came into the neighborhood, my first professional experience in Valley Junction. My first experience in Valley Junction was coming down to look at model trains, and when I was like 6 years old. But my first professional neighborhood experience was with a development controversy with the Phoenix School. And I've always said, I still, after coming through that, love this neighborhood and still want to work with the folks there to make it better. I think that we have a scrapbook in our office of development controversies from the 1970s. And it's funny because there was this moment where we were thinking about, well, we need to change the name of the town back to Valley Junction. And the clippings are hilarious. So there's really never been a moment when this small town in the middle of the big city hasn't had these issues come up. But I think you've got to look at that with a sense of humor and realize that it's exciting to get to protect that. And so we have to constantly be taking steps, and it's got a lot of needs, but it's worth loving.
Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
My name's Ralph Haskins, and I live at 729 Fifth Street. I'm also involved in the neighborhood association. And I would like to speak collectively, and part of the reason why everybody's here is because they're vested. And they're interested in our community in Valley Junction. And I think it's a terrific, and maybe they're here to see you guys, I don't know. But
Doubt it.
anyways, the one thing, and I hope I'm wrong, but I get a sense that there's a bit of a disconnect between the city, who does a really great job and puts a lot of work in with it, with organizations that are dedicated to Valley Junction. That includes the Historical Society, the Business District, and the Neighborhood Association. And I think the reason why we're all here tonight is because we want to have some input. And I think that's very important that we have that input. And we haven't talked about that. And then concerns, there's a lot of things that I've learned recently talking to people about Valley Junction, and I think there's a lot that the city can learn if they talk to the people of Valley Junction. And essentially, that's it. The other part of that, and I would like to talk a little bit about your presentation. We probably wouldn't have these issues if you followed the infill definition, and that is a respect of the history of that community and a respect for the materials in the building. You've done some outstanding things with the Winchester building where you're able to preserve, and it still has some integrity, yet it's modern. I think that's like terrific, and that's a great way to work. I wouldn't be really personally a big fan of National Historic Registries because of the complexity of it, the cost, and the time frames. And then the other component, I'm not really sure if we've done our due diligence to redefine that area where we want to put a moratorium on building. And I think it needs to be open to conversation. And I think the city, the community planning department, and those organizations need to get together and have some conversations, and I think a lot can be learned from that. So thank you for your time.
Thanks, Ralph.
Hey, can I ask you, Ralph?
Yeah.
Your final point there, to define the area where we have to explore, do you have suggestions? Is there something specific that stood out to you, or?
Yeah, well, I respect the idea that the community planning people are trying to narrowly define this area in a way that it doesn't infringe on other businesses and business owners and their ability to fix things up where the historic relevance is probably not as great. So I think that's probably part of your intent to do that. But, railroad has some significance. And so that particular area, I think there should be some considerations for that. We talked about Renee's, the old telephone exchange building. And those things can come about through conversations. And so when we're talking about it, I would have never thought about the telephone exchange building, but I love driving by it because it's beautiful. And there's all kinds of things, and there would be a real great loss in the community if that building would get torn down and a duplex put up or something. So I think that comes back to that idea of engagement.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we've properly engaged it. Linda, have you read this master plan 2016?
Yeah.
Okay, so you're really familiar with it. There's so much information in here that I wonder if a consultant almost becomes redundant, or before we get into consultants, that maybe we put together some talking points of what our focus should be with the consultant. I think a lot of the work's been done, wouldn't you say? And you look at that master plan?
I think that this is truly a master plan. It's that 10,000 square or 10,000 foot view. I think what we're talking about now is taking those elements and actually implementing them. Yeah. Everything that we talked about tonight, looking at the buildings, doing an analysis of what's right for zoning and for land use, the revisioning that we've talked about. I don't know if you've been part of that process, but we were looking at those edges of Valley Junction and that railroad corridor. We really think that would be subject to development pressure, and we need to get ahead of it. So we've talked about all that, and all those are elements of that master plan.
So should those areas be included in the area where we're putting a moratorium until we can better define what it is?
I'm most concerned about the Valley Junction area because that has the most development pressure. What I'd like to do is focus on that, but then use that as a structure as we start expanding out. Using that revisioning to look at these other areas. We talked about how the 100 and 200 block are different contexts. The 300 block is different contexts. 400 and 500 are different contexts. I think there's different solutions there. And as you said, it isn't necessarily appropriate to capture areas that aren't our definition of historic, but I think it's important to recognize those buildings that are in there. And so I think that revisioning will look at that area, but we want to be mindful that the moratorium is affecting people's rights. And so what we want to do is address that as fast as possible, as targeted as possible, but still say, we're continuing the work. We're going to look at all these areas and say, what's right for that? But it's difficult to, it's not one brush we're going to paint everything. It's not one solution. We need that time for this input. We need that time for really looking at that and saying, this is the right solution for this area. And if we take that time and keep the moratorium in place, it's going to be too long. We're going to lose momentum.
Yeah, a couple points. Well, one, you've reached out to us, and I really appreciate that. And we had a great meeting, learned a lot, and it was really informative, and people left there excited to have you come see us again. And so I do really sincerely appreciate the things that you've done. I think at the end of the day, what I think the people in Valley Junction are looking for is a type of conformity that has a historical relevance, as I had indicated, that's respectful of what was there. And so the rusting metal has tripped a lot of triggers. And rightfully so, because it doesn't fulfill the infill requirements that are outlined in your presentation tonight, because it doesn't represent or respect the historical relevance of the building and the nature of the building. So I guess to summarize, if we could see a little more input from the citizens involved, especially these three organizations, because they have a wealth of information. And you'll never get bored with Matt being there. So thanks so much.
Thank you, Ralph.
Thank you, Ralph.
How you doing? Jonas Cutler, 204 Holiday Circle. Just real quick, because there's a lot of emphasis tonight on hiring the consultants. We actually, the mayor started this whole presentation by talking about hiring two different consultants. And the nature of consultants, then I just was a little curious about, because we're going to put a lot of weight on the input and opinion of these people, or whoever the consultants may be. So I was wondering, then, was there going to be, who they're going to be, or what's going to be the bid process of selecting? I know we're talking about a very narrow time frame, right? So I don't know how you go out and find consultants of this caliber, but what's going to be the bid process? How long is that, the duration of that bid going to be open then? What, the budget is going to be behind that? what's going to be the review process of these where they're hired, right? I assume that there's going to be some material contracts that are going to come before the board, and all information being stricken from it to ensure there's no conflict of interest going on, right? I have to make sure there's no railroading. Come on, guys. Real or perceived, right? So that was, kind of a little bit fun there. And there's two different consultant concepts going on tonight, right? We've kind of seemed to lost sight of the second part that's going to come up here concerning parking. There's consultants going to be hired for, re-examine the parking process. It's really interesting. I really love the St. Kilda's presentation here, and that was really kind of goes to some of the point here. I stopped him on the way out, fortunately, asked him how much public money he received in doing that. He talked about how much work and renovation he put into that project. $70,000 is what he told me, right? So I think it's great to see. You guys all know me. I'd prefer the number being zero myself, but $70,000 for that, it shows that it does work. Valley Junction attracts people. It attracts commerce, right? If people given the opportunity, they will do that without necessarily outlays of public funding on it. Councilperson Harmon, the last time I saw the room this full, actually it was double this because we weren't 6 feet apart from each other, was when we were discussing the Phoenix school issue, right? And that's when I just have a little humor back to it. I tried to outbid CHI by bidding $1.50. Again, my name is Jonas Cutler. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Jonas.
Thank you, Jonas.
Hi, I'm Sue Jensen, and I live at 2625 Vine Street, and I'm in Fair Meadows Retirement Village, and I'm a new resident of 3.5 years. However, I was an artist here in Valley Junction, and I had an apartment, which was an art studio, in the building where Dr. Deusteicher was, or maybe you heard of Dr. Deusteicher, but he had a medical practice in that building next to the community center. So it would have been, as you face the community center, on the left. And so I loved being there. It was just wonderful. Our rent was $75 a month from Betty Hill. and it was a great place. And buses would come and they would tour the studio and they would watch us working and doing our artwork. And of course, we went for lunch and we did our framing all in Valley Junction. And it was just a great place to be. And so here I am living in West Des Moines and very excited about being a part of Valley Junction. And I'm excited about what the city council and the staff of the city is doing to make Valley Junction continue to be a wonderful attraction to our whole area. I mean, it's a very important thing to the city of Des Moines. People want to come here, tourists want to come here, and they want to shop and they want to eat. And so these are so exciting. And I'm very like to hear the Mr. Long suggestion about having a community, a committee of people made up of business people and residents who can help work and see the whole picture. And I do believe that it's very important that we have, when new things come in, that they have to use the architecture, and it needs to not look like an albatross in the middle of a very arty area. And we have to protect that. And we have to do what it takes to protect it. And perhaps have grants available so that people can help their homes be in keeping with an area. And that also the people that come to work at St. Kilda's, and that, as he mentioned, he wanted more people to come, a lot of those are young people and they need places that they can afford to live in. And so that Valley Junction needs to have some places that would be affordable and that they need to look like the area. They don't need to look like a big modern apartment building, but they need to be able to be, people need to be able to live in the area where they work. So I commend you for what you're doing, and please keep on keeping on, and we'll cheer you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you, Sue.
Okay.
Before I ask for anybody on the phone, anyone else here in the council chambers?
Would you pull up that map? Show me the boundary for me, please. My name's Nick Woggy. I live at 136 3rd Street. I've kind of been on this with Kevin for about a year and a half now. And that started with the Cutler development on 4th and Railroad. Nothing against Scott. Scott, I love if you're here. Did a great job at the Winchester building. Good job at St. Kilda's. McLaren's still kind of looks like a funeral home. Did pretty good work. I've done some research on you. I've heard a lot of people say, you're an okay guy. Even your family is okay. What I brought the map up for is I'm under the impression that the city can rezone anything from the alley between 3rd and 4th and the alley between 6th and 7th to Valley Junction historic business. I'd kind of like to push the point about rezoning the 500 block, the residentials there. There's really nothing to stop Scott from buying a property and putting up a building that goes from sidewalk to alley. Doesn't have to meet any of the commercial zoning setbacks, parking requirements, etc. I'd also like to see Valley Junction historic business locked. Nothing to go down Railroad, not extending up to 5th, not extending east along Railroad or along 8th. The area is single-family residential development. Right now, the 300 block just got turned into medium-density housing. Not quite a good fit for the neighborhood. Wiederstein has bought the first 2 lots next to the old Wicker in the Works. He's trying to buy the 3rd lot. I don't know if you know him, it's Ron Pera, also known as the mayor of 4th Street, with good reason. And Wiederstein actually just came out and told him that he wants to put in parking. Are you guys willing to sacrifice single-family residential units for a parking lot on 4th Street? Is that something we need to, I mean, this is something I'd really like to see addressed. It wouldn't be fair for Scott to come in and buy, say, the northeast corner of 2nd Street and put in one. It wouldn't be fair to the residents along there, would it? I know we need to do infill. I know you need to update. There are some stinker buildings down in Valley Junction. I don't think the 300 block deserved a 3-story building. 2 would have been plenty. Probably would have been a lot less hassle. Wouldn't have this, probably, because it would have fit in a little better. Wouldn't stick out there like a sore thumb when you come down 5th Street. Fit in amongst the other buildings. I think we do need a committee, and I think we need to sit down and discuss what Valley Junction's vision, or West Des Moines' vision is for Valley Junction. Because right now it just seems like helter-skelter. It's just, I think it's just gotten carried away. And that's about all I have to say right now. Thanks.
Thank you, Nick.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Nick?
Thank you.
Good evening, Ryan Wiederstein of 987 Tulip Tree Lane in West Des Moines. I'm the developer on 315 5th Street. We named that building Union 315. That's the building that's currently, we demoed the building that was there prior in the process of putting up the new building. I just want to give my perspective on being a developer in that area, and I won't try to speak for Scott. Scott and I are probably the 2 guys in here that have put the most money into 5th Street and looking for what this community is going to look like in the next 5 years. When we looked at this, I can speak for myself. I would have not have done a project down there if it wasn't for the city having incentives for upper story housing. That my $5.5 million project was not going to go there. It was going to go probably to 3 strip malls out in the suburbs somewhere. But we chose Valley Junction because what Valley Junction could be. And that without that upper story housing, it was never going to happen. We're also pushing the rents up on our projects. This is another thing to think about down here too. If you need money on the 100 and 200 block to improve those properties, those owners need to make more money in those buildings. If you're a business owner or if you're a landlord, you have to earn more so you can reinvest in your building. By us putting projects in on the 300 block, it increases the rents in the area. And we'll show you that you can get more money for property down there. We'll get, Scott's getting high dollar rents on his, I'll get high dollar rents on mine. Eventually, people will come into that neighborhood. St. Kilda's, I think they said they brought 600 people in there in one weekend through their door. So that was probably 600 people that probably would not have been in Valley Junction otherwise on that weekend. That's amazing. So if we can bring more businesses to the 300 block, they all have to go by the 100 and 200 block on their way. So everybody should win in that situation. And, you know, the tidal rise together, bringing revenue to everybody in those businesses, the 100, 200, and 300 block. I get that those buildings do not conform to what is seen on the 100 and 200 block. I mean, maybe going back now, I can look at my building and say maybe we could have maybe made some changes to that. Maybe Scott thinks the same thing about his paneling on the side of his building. However, I wanted something that was authentic. I didn't want something that looked like it replicated something that was built in 1920. And we spent a lot of time with our architects. In fact, I actually spent more money on my architect because I wanted the same architect that the bank was going to use, so we had consistency going up the 300 block. I mean, I probably spent an extra $100,000 on an architect that I didn't need to. But I did that solely to get the right look and the consistency between those two lots. In regards to the lots I purchased behind, I recognized when I went through the city code that there is 0 lot lines in this area. And you have to, because every building down there is a 0 lot line building on the 100 and 200 block. That's why they have 0 lot lines. That wasn't like a mistake. That's inherent to the area. We bought those 2 houses behind us in the event that we needed to have parking available. When we actually could have brought our building in the back of our lot all the way to the alley, we chose not to, and we put 9 parking spaces in behind it. We bought those houses behind it, so we had ancillary parking as well, so we didn't flow out onto Walnut, into Elm, and into city parking or on street parking. So we were trying to be as thoughtful about that as possible. It's very difficult down there, and I think it's probably reasonable to say the city's going to be going through a major study on parking, I'm assuming, on what's going to happen down here. It's a lot of money that the developers have put in there. I'm from West Des Moines here. I've lived here for a long time. I care about the area, and I wouldn't have come there if I didn't want to be in that area. I had plenty of opportunities to spend my money elsewhere, but I chose that neighborhood, and I want to see it do really well. And there's some really good momentum right now. One of my fears here is if we sit here and we stall this out for months on end, that we're going to lose some of that momentum. Part of my investment down there, I was actually relying on more development to occur down there to bring in more businesses and more people. There's a short window here where this area can be something great, or it's going to be just something average. It may, you know, if you want to keep the status quo down there, that's one thing. If you want to improve it, improve property values, improve wages, get it out of being a low income area, make everything come up together. I mean, this is the opportunity to do that. So that's my perspective on the development side of it. At any point in time, if anybody has any comments for me or would like to contact me, feel free anytime. I'm more than happy to talk to anybody in here about any of the development that's going on with our project. Thanks.
Thanks, Ron.
Thank you, Ron.
I just have a couple comments I'd like to share there. So part of the project funds were to ensure that we had workforce housing. So I'm troubled to hear that you're putting in projects that were going to result in higher dollar rents. The second thing I'd say is, when you say you don't want to see something that looked like it was from 1920, that's what the area is like. So I think it's important that future development look and feel like it's from the area. And the final thing I'd say is, you know, if you want something great versus something average, I think it's pretty great, and we got to do a lot to keep it that way. So just some feedback.
I agree with you. When I was speaking about, my point on the rents was the commercial rents, not the housing rents. Which I'm a landlord of both. I have commercial properties and residential properties in West Des Moines and in other cities. And it is important that rents in that area for commercial properties are at a level that attracts good businesses and that those properties can be maintained in a better condition than what they are today. Otherwise, they're gonna go away. They're gonna fall apart. And as far as being average, this area could be so great and it can improve so much more than what it is today. And the city has done a phenomenal job of putting plans in place and incentives in place to attract people and money to that area. My fear is that that's going to go away. And maybe it's not that it goes away, but it does need to probably morph into something that's different. You mean the upper story housing worked. It got money down there and it got projects down there. Now it's probably got to be something else. It's probably got to be more rehabilitation. So I apologize. I didn't mean to say that the area is average. It's a great area. I wouldn't have gone there if it wasn't a great area. It can be better though.
But Ryan, you said the only reason you went down there was because of the city incentives. Otherwise, you were not coming to Valley Junction. And
There's no way I would take the risk.
And you had no interest in making your building look like what was down there. The last thing that I want to see, and I've been in West Des Moines my entire life, my family's been here since it was Valley Junction. The last thing I want to see for the Valley Junction Business District is the East Village of Des Moines, where all they do is go in, bulldoze the buildings, build new, and say, look what we've got. This is a brand new building. Doesn't it look cool? That's the last thing that I want to see. I hope that's the last thing the entire council wants to see, because if we don't do something down there now, there's nothing stopping you, Scott Cutler, or any other developer with big money behind you to go in there and bulldoze those buildings in the 100, 200, 300, 400, and the houses on the 500 block and make all new buildings. And we've lost our history down in Valley Junction. Obviously, you don't know the history of West Des Moines and Valley Junction, nor do you care, nor does Scott Cutler care. And that just infuriates the hell out of me.
Don't, now, come on now, let's, okay. Let me say,
Why have
go
we
ahead.
lost our civility here?
Yeah.
I can.
When he said it's average, that's when we lost the civility.
Go ahead, Russ, and then I want to ask.
I mean, okay, number one, I apologize for saying it was that. I should not have said that, but I apologize.
So maybe.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay, first of all, I want to say, this meeting up until right now has been phenomenal.
Yep.
People have come forward, they've shared their thoughts, they've shared their criticisms, they've shared their disappointments. Great. And I'm just never been more pleased with the meeting than what I've seen tonight, because citizens of all ages are here, of all backgrounds, and young and old, they're all here. So I appreciate that. So let's not try to, let's have some civility here, and let's talk about issues, and let's not talk about people that don't care about the city. Okay, I want to be real careful of that, because I think that's taken us down a rabbit hole that's unproductive. Maybe you might want to spend just a little bit of time talking about what does great look like. If you said we're doing good and it's average, but it could be great, maybe you can use some time to explain what does that mean, great.
Yeah,
So people can understand what you're saying. You're saying it could be great.
And I know where you're coming from. Here's the thing: is you have a lot of businesses down here that are mom and pop shops that rely on foot traffic. And there was a time when you would go to Valley Junction, there was not a car on that street at night. And all of a sudden, you're starting to see cars down there in front of restaurants. And all of a sudden, now it's one of the only places that is like a real walkable area. Probably in the entire metro. There's probably 4 places in the entire metro that are truly walkable, and that's one of them. But there was a time when you would walk down there, and it would be a Wednesday night, and there's just nobody on the streets. There's not a car out there. And all of a sudden, you start having restaurants and bars. And I get it. You may not want to have, obviously careful saying you don't want to have a lot of restaurants and bars, but you got to bring pedestrians down there and get them to go. And those shops will all benefit from it. They're all going to win. at the end of the day. That building that I tore down had no way of being salvaged. It was not worth anything. I paid more per square foot for that ground than people pay for ground downtown Des Moines. I mean, I paid top dollar for that ground. There was no way to salvage that building. And it was next to a parking lot. That was the only real option for that site, was to infill it and to put a building on it. I can't speak for everybody else that's built and done things down there. My personal opinion is I don't see anybody really going down the 1 and 200 block and tear buildings out. It would be very difficult to work those buildings and do anything with them because of the 0 lot line. It'd be almost impossible. It'd be cost prohibitive. So I don't know that anybody in here has to really worry about the 1 and 200 block disappearing. And going up 4th and 5th, I kind of don't see that either, but I mean, you'd have to pay a lot for those houses to make it work. So I don't think there's a lot more that's going to actually have to take place down here, other than you need to get these buildings restored and improved so the 1 and 200 block can benefit from some of this as well. There's not a ton of infill lots down here. I mean, I know the Billy V's project, that might be a little bit of an exception. I don't know if I'd really call that an infill lot, but I mean, there's might be one parking lot left on 3rd Street between the Quilt Shop and Hinge. That's about it. I don't think I can think of one other property down there that's got the potential to have a new building on it. So in all fairness, there's not going to be a ton of new buildings being put up down there. But I do respect how you care about the area, and I apologize for saying that it was average.
Okay.
Okay. Is there any other questions?
I just want to thank you. I want to thank Scott Cutler and others. I mean, everybody here is an investor in this community. Everybody's invested. They bought a house, they've bought a business, they've rehabbed a business. And, you know, I want to thank you for your investment in West Des Moines, everybody here. And this isn't an us versus them. We started that out. I thought we started out on a great foot and a great note, and all of a sudden it's become us versus them. I'm extremely proud of the economic development programs that we came up with that have helped invest in Valley Junction, that have brought people down to Valley Junction, that has helped make Valley Junction even better than it was. These programs are working. We've got the property improvement program, we've got the regulatory compliance fund, we've got the property tax rebate program, we've got the upper story housing program, and we catered these programs to Valley Junction. I've been on the council for 11 and a half years. All I've done since I've been on this council is invest in Valley Junction. I mean, I've made jokes to you, Kevin, about that. All the money that we've put down into Valley Junction, all the investment that we put down into Valley Junction, beautifying Valley Junction, putting money into the baseball fields, putting money into all these different economic development programs. And you're a testament to the economic development projects and how they're working. I mean, we've seen a 7-to-1 investment in public and private dollars here. For every one public dollar, 7 private dollars have been invested in these programs. These are successful programs and are working. And that's why we're here. If there's any regret that I have from these programs, is that we didn't think ahead. We didn't think about this potential, that we would have buildings that would get torn down and put up that didn't fit the area. Do you think there's a single person up here that wants to transform this whole area and make it look like East Village or New York City or something else? No. We all love this city. That's why we sit up here and serve. We all love Valley Junction. It's a gem. It's where we started. We really love Valley Junction, and we love this city. We want to see it to be the best city that it possibly can be. We want to see all of you benefit. We want to see all of you smiling and going into the restaurants and shopping in the businesses. We want to see your properties increase in value. We want to see more people come into the area. These have been phenomenal economic development projects. They've been so successful, we just didn't see how much success they were going to have and think ahead to think maybe we need to look at how this would look like when the buildings go in. And so now here we are, we've taken a time out. We're all on the same team, including Ryan, including Scott. We all want to see this area beautified and better than it is today. And we need just to continue to work together. We need to hear your input and your feedback. That's why we're here. We want to continue to receive that. We want you all to be a part of this process. We started, what was this, like a year, 2 years ago? That we started at the, this was under renovation, and we were at the School Resource Center. And I don't know who brought the willy-nilly development, but this is exactly why we had this meeting 2 years ago, was to go down this path and talk about what do we want for Valley Junction? What do you want for Valley Junction? Because people were starting to come in and asking, can I do this development? Can I do this development? And we didn't really have an overall plan. We had the 10,000-foot view, but we didn't really have an overall plan, and we wanted feedback and input from you all, but people got all riled up during the meeting, and it got put on the back burner. And here we are.
I will say this too, the process, and Scott might be able to attest to it too, the process to get here, I mean, this is the one thing that's great about West Des Moines. There might be some red tape, but it is a very scrutinized process. And it was not just like go in there and fill out an application and here we are. I've been working on this thing for 2 years and Scott's been down there longer than I have. It is a long process. And the city, through the entire process, working with staff, does not take any of that lightly. They didn't take, when I brought an architectural element to them, they wanted to know why I picked that architectural element. I mean, and it wasn't just like a quick answer, okay, good enough. They did scrutinize what we brought forward. So to think that it's just, there was no process is incorrect. It was a very scrutinized process. It was difficult, and it took a lot of time with our engineers and our architects to get there. So
Ryan, one last thing I want to say is that you talked about that, how in the evenings and whatever, that Valley Junction is so busy, and it is, but it is not because of what you or Scott have done down there. Back in the 70s and early 80s, about all we had down in Valley Junction was bars and antique shops. Okay, since then, there's been a major transformation, and we've got, as you said, the mom and pop stores down there. We've got Nan's Nummies. Nan's been there for 33 years, okay? We've got a lot of other properties down there that the businesses have been there, either owner-occupied or rented, that have been there for a long time. So it's been happening since the mid to late 80s, this transformation. And in the 90s and early 2000s, it really has taken off. Yeah. I don't know if you were down on Fifth Street on a Saturday prior to you owning property down there, but you can't find a spot to park on the street. Yeah. And the only reason for that is because people are coming and have been coming to Valley Junction for a long time. And like Nan said, you get bus tours coming in. I guess it was this lady over here. You get bus tours coming into Valley Junction. They want to see what's there. That's long before you or Mr. Cutler came into town.
I'm not taking credit for that. I don't even have a building up.
But what's the point?
My point is that it's not because of what's happened recently. This has been happening. This transformation has been going on for years and years and years. And we want to keep it going.
Well, I agree. And
so
I think what we're doing is going to keep it going.
Thank you again for your investment down there. Appreciate it, Scott. Appreciate your investment down there.
Yeah, man.
We all want to see the area continue to develop and develop in a smart way. We want to make sure we're preserving our history. We want to make sure that we're rehabbing the buildings down there. And we're doing this in a smart way. That's why we're here.
I want to try to wrap it up so we can get in that.
Your Honor, thank you. I'll be brief, I promise. I just wanted to make a concern because it's something that had worried me. I'm sorry. Upward rent pressure is something that has been of significant concern in our neighborhood among our businesses for a long time throughout this transition. That's something that they talk about. A year ago, you could stand on Fifth Street and there were no cars because businesses were shut down because of the COVID-19 pandemic. On Thursday, we'll reopen the farmers market and welcome folks back. And instead of having a concert series in Railroad Park, you'll be able to get the vaccine courtesy our friends at Hy-Vee who are bringing a van down. And I wanted to plug that, and now I got to. Kevin is correct. Since the 1970s, there was a merchants committee in Valley Junction that was down there. That was the predecessor to the Historic Valley Junction Foundation. We were founded in 1987 when the Main Street Iowa program came along and kind of helped to make what was going on already a little bit more formal. But that history stretches back 33 years. And, you know, obviously, we today represent 138 independent small businesses that are located in the neighborhood. And these are 138 small business dreams which are going on there. There are people who have taken extraordinary risks to take that leap into entrepreneurship. And frankly, in addition to being an original, walkable, sustainable community, we're a neighborhood where that's possible. Our new board president, Meredith, her business has been in 3 different locations in Valley Junction. Each one is progressively larger as that business has grown. Our new board vice president, Ryan Cooper, has developed 1, 2, and now 3 businesses in the neighborhood and has more ideas that he's trying to get off the ground. We think one of the things that needs to factor into the conversation of what would make Valley Junction great is preserving that opportunity for the small business entrepreneur to find a place and a home to grow a business. And that is one of the unique and precious assets that we have in the community that isn't tied to real estate, except that it is in terms of the rent and the ability of these folks to locate and be in the neighborhood. And so preserving that ecosystem is essential, and really without it, I think the whole greater Des Moines metro area would really be losing something. So we do understand that over the course of time, some of our buildings have reached a condition where demolition has become inevitable. We aren't challenging that in certain situations, but I just do want to keep our eyes focused on the people who are down there working in the Junction every day and really trying to create an outstanding guest experience that helps the neighborhood to stay new and to continue to generate interest. And thank you, Councilman, for speaking to that. Those decades of investment are the only reason I have a job, but they're the only reason we have a Valley Junction. And I think it's important to recognize that too.
And we owe all those people a huge debt of gratitude for investing in our city and for investing and being here for as long as they have been.
Yes, sir. I think that's true as well.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the game changers was the flood protection. I mean, we spent $60 million after 1993 to make sure it didn't flood. I remember as a kid flooding multiple times. People couldn't put money in their property because it flooded all the time. It ruined their properties. It wasn't devalued it. But after 93, I think the number I heard was $60 million to protect it from flooding. And in 08, it didn't flood, and it hasn't flooded since then. So the complaints I got was my values are too high because now I don't flood. But there was $60 million invested to make sure that wasn't going to happen. And to me, that opened the whole door for people's willingness now to make substantial investment down there because they didn't have to worry about their businesses being flooded out again. So that was really the huge start, and that was after the 93, to Kevin's point, when you started seeing activity in the late 90s and early 2000s. People were comfortable now, my property's protected from being flooded. Who wants to spend my life savings and get flooded out every 15 years? So, but again, that was close to $60 million from what I remember.
Wow.
So, okay.
I'll be quick, I promise. My name is Blaine Horman. I live on 606th Street. I just want to thank everyone again tonight. Everyone was very passionate. I just kind of wanted to, first off, might be unpopular opinion here, but I want to thank Scott Cutler and I apologize if I butcher your last name, Mr. Ryan Wiederstein, if he's still here. Seeing your buildings, your reinvestment in this community, you're absolutely right. Had that money maybe not been offered to you, you probably wouldn't have built there. I know a lot of people that have seen your buildings and they're inspired to reinvest in our community, I myself being one of them. I've sat on some money for a while now and I've just decided to reinvest a little more into my home. Excuse me. The reason for that being, when I first looked at Valley Junction, there weren't a lot of rentals available. The ones that were available for the price weren't that great. There's a lot of work to be done in Valley Junction. I happened to get very lucky and had a rare opportunity to purchase a home. Basically, what I just want to say is with the moratorium, unpopular opinion, I do not support it. I don't want to lose any momentum that we currently have. I also think that a subcommittee with multiple groups is a great idea, but I also caution against the formality of it. We don't want to tread in the waters of an HOA And we definitely want to pull in multiple, excuse me. We definitely want to pull in multiple opinions. I would recommend maybe 1 or 2 council members in that group, as well as someone from the foundation, whether they're paid or volunteer, as well as local business owners and local residents, to have a much larger group. So we have a better group collective than we currently do. Seems like these rusty buildings seem to drum up a lot of attention and passion. And then as soon as that fixes, it's faded. So let's take this opportunity to really run with it and make something great. But again, thank you for all of your time.
Thank you, Blaine.
Thank you, Blaine.
Thank you for your time.
Hello, Brenda Crossman, 136 3rd Street. I'll make this quick also. We can't forget that this is also a very residential area. There is one street of businesses and then a lot of single-family homes. We are so proud of St. Kilda's, great, 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 but we can't deal with the traffic. The citizens that live there are so frustrated with the traffic that it's bringing in. Do we need more of that? I don't know. That's where the balance has got to, when you're trying to achieve balance there. That's the tricky part. We want successful businesses. We can't handle the parking. We can't handle the traffic. Also, the frustration regarding this that was presented by the city and has not been followed at all. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda.
Thank you.
Dan Porter, I live off Army Post in West Des Moines. We bought the building on 5th Street 2.5 years ago. It was a bead store. And partner and I thought, he's grown up at Mike Campiano. He grew up in West Des Moines and used to ride down Vine Street to go to Hillside. So we love Des Moines. We love West Des Moines. We love the area. We're going to be lifelong members of the community. We decided to move our business into Valley Junction because we felt like giving back some. We thought it'd be a $400,000 project. It's triple that. So we have a 1,700 square foot building of office space that costs that much money. So I just want to say, when we talk about rent increases or we talk about cost of doing things, if we don't have rent increases, if we don't have activity down there, there won't be enough money to renovate these buildings. The $75,000 that we got and the low interest loan is not a big financial benefit for the structure we put in. And we didn't know that going in. We had to completely replace the foundation. The alleyway had completely disintegrated under the building. Had to completely reinforce it with steel or it was going to collapse. That's going to be all those buildings down there. So if you love Valley Junction and you love the buildings down there and you want to keep it, you've got to think about how do we economically fix these buildings versus, boy, I really want to keep everything just as is and I want to keep rents low and I want everybody to be happy. They'll be happy with more sales, more business, more people, because I feel it down there. I love it. I'm invested. And we'll be in the future. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you very much.
Let me see if anybody's on the phone that wants to share any public comments.
Don't forget star 6 to unmute, not #6. *6.
Okay, so
Probably lost them.
next steps, I guess the consensus of the council is, it seems like from the comments, we probably ought to get some names from the foundation, the business community, and the citizens that Ralph Haskins mentioned for a committee, because we've had multiple committees down there that seem to work well, but in the interim, it just seems like we need some professional help in some respects for some objectivity. I mean, if we're going to start putting parameters on people's ability to invest in their property, we have to have rhyme or reason why we're doing it. So we need to probably figure out the best, fastest way to find the most talented consultant, but get this committee together so we have the right input. And then, the question for the council is, do you continue the moratorium on where it currently is, or do you refine it down to the Valley Junction Historic Business District, again, with the idea that until we can solve it, there's no structural changes to be made for those buildings in that area until we can sort through this.
So let me, we'll run through those steps real quick. I know, I got a lot of good notes, so thank you for all the comment, but I just want to confirm on the moratorium, is there support to modify the boundary to keep it to the historic Valley Junction zoning district?
If I can say, my intent, when I brought this up for the moratorium from 4th to 6th Railroad Divine, was for the district itself. I wasn't intending the houses and everything to be in it. So
Okay.
I'm fine with the modified as you've got it there, because that's really what we're looking at.
Okay. Matt, are you okay?
I'm comfortable with that.
You okay?
Yeah, totally agree. I did not want
All
the
right.
houses to be included.
Okay.
Okay.
So, yep.
Excuse me, I agree as well.
Yeah, I
Okay.
thought I heard you say
No, I didn't
yes.
say anything.
Yeah,
I am
okay.
now.
Okay, and the currently exempted properties continue exempted. Time, again, we will try to get you that timeline as soon as possible, be effective with the moratorium time. And then it's up to the council how they want to deal with incentives at this point.
Yeah, and I think we want to get our arms around kind of what the restrictions are going to be, because I think that's going to drive the incentives. The more restrictive we are, the more
Yep.
expensive it
Yep.
becomes.
Agree.
But in the interim, I guess, maybe Linda, you could work with those three organizations and try to come up with some recommendations on, at some point, we need this committee put together. Have each of those three organizations come up with, three people that they think would be good representatives on there, and help us get this committee set up as we're going, so each of those groups know that they're going to have adequate representation on the committee for input and oversight and suggestions.
Okay. So with that, our first initial steps prior to getting the committee in place is we're asking for some direction to staff. And then one we've already discussed is staff to bring forward a resolution to modify the moratorium. Right now, it expires tonight.
Are we going to extend that for at least 2 weeks? I mean, you said even 2 weeks is a little tight. Should we
It is a
extend
little
it?
tight.
I think we ought to extend it at least for another 30 days until your recommendation comes back to say we need it for 60, 90, whatever it might be. So I think it needs to be extended at least a month.
That's fine in this area, and again, we're just restricting exterior building changes. So if people need to make changes to keep their business running
Yeah.
and stuff, they're fine to do that. We just don't want outside exterior changes.
Exterior changes or demolitions?
Demolition.
Right.
Yes.
Demolitions. yep.
Okay.
That would be an exterior change in my
30
mind.
days, and we're modifying the footprint to the zoning district.
Right.
One of the things we will come back with on the 17th is hopefully an outline of our recommendations and what package is going to be put forth with the consultant's help. And then the incentive programs, again, can fit in their own timeline. We don't necessarily need to be part of the process with that.
No, I think we just, let's get our parameters set, and then we can figure out what the incentives need to be based on those.
Okay. So what resources we need, we're recommending a consultant to provide identification and evaluation of these properties, create guidelines, and recommend regulation. So there will be not only evaluation of historic properties, but aspects of zoning and regulation in that. And then we will need staff time for administrating that.
That's fine.
And that's that key of, the consultant only knows what they know. Staff can put in what's important to West Des Moines.
That's fine. I want to make sure that we get the three groups that get us their suggested three people to
Are you-
sit on there.
I'm curious on the selection of the consultant. I mean, I think
Yes.
we ought
Right.
to have the groups,
Be prior to.
be involved in helping identify who I don't want to have a consultant selected,
No.
make recommendations, and then the various interest groups are say, hey, we didn't like the guy in the first place. So
That's
Oh, that-
why
I
I
mean-
kept asking about the other consultant. I want to make sure everybody approves, everybody agrees.
So just that process, the city is allowed to hire professional consultants on qualifications. They don't go through a bid process. We can solicit them by people we know. We can ask for a request for proposal. Those take time. We probably won't have that consultant in 2 weeks if we go through the request for proposal part.
But at the same time, I think we need to have the committee, if you will, selected to then talk about what their ideas are from the residential property owner, business owner, commercial property owner, business owner standpoint, to then say, here's the consultant that we need to go after.
And they-
That's putting, otherwise it's putting the cart before the horse.
Well, and I think that's not only important for that process, but then for the actual input that the consultant is going to ask for as they go through that process.
And the interview consulting process. We do that with city managers. We've done that with police chiefs. So the representatives of this committee, and maybe it's not the whole committee, but representatives from the committee need to be on the evaluation selection process, even though it's not a, publicly bid, but still an evaluation process. That's what we do with all the key hires we have in the city.
And all this is good, but we're not looking at 2 weeks. We're probably looking at.
That's fine.
We know it's not gonna be 2 weeks.
That's fine.
This is,
Yeah.
we're not talking a year either, but no, nothing's
We're
gonna,
not.
if
And
we
if
do this in
something-
2 weeks, we messed up.
Well, and if some huge opportunity comes in this district in the interim, I think we're all willing to talk about if it's a good project, help facilitating it. I don't think anybody I've heard tonight would shoot down a good project. The question is, what is a good project? But if someone wanted to come in and rehab one of these buildings and spend all that money, I don't think anybody is going to get in their way. So I don't want anybody to think that we're going to shut down everything. Let's see what's coming in the interim, but let's do it and do it right. We've tried to, if you look at all these reports, I mean, I'm not sure you can do more than we did with that historic West Des Moines master plan. So, and we've heard comments about that tonight, but to everybody's point, we need to have a review selection committee for the consultant, which includes a representative from each of those groups.
Well, and Steve, your comment about rehabbing a property is a whole different animal than,
Right.
I bought this property and I'm bulldozing it and building something else.
Yeah, to me, that's the biggest concern is that. So I, even though this may take longer than people want, we don't want it to take too long. If there's a project that pops up in this district that fits what everybody's looking for, then I think we help facilitate it.
We want to do this right this time and not.
I also want to make sure that we keep mentioning committee, and I like that. I think representation in terms of making sure that it's a good cross-representation of the type of, the kinds of folks that need to be on that. Don't rush into saying this is a committee and we got everybody that all got the same views. It needs to be a committee of a variety of different interests. I think that was spelled out when you spoke. So developing this committee, I think, is really critical. If we're saying now they're going to be the ones evaluating the bids for proposals and all of that stuff, we need cross-representation on that committee. I think we need to spend as much time making sure that committee has diverse representation of different levels on this committee, because they're doing some of the work of the city.
I was going to say the same thing, and there's a neighborhood association that I don't think is here represented tonight, Vicky Long Hill at Angler. I think there's another neighborhood association we need to reach out to as well and bring them into the fold.
And we might look at some of the existing committees that have people. I know like Scott and Eric are on that review committee. We've got people on the implementation committee.
Right.
I mean, there may be people that already have a ton of experience down there that are the right people that can get running right away.
Well, and that's right. And then the implementation committee was put together based off of the larger group for the historic West Des Moines master plan. So I think we've already got that diverse group on that implementation, and they just haven't met for, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years. So
maybe Matt, some of the other PP, they can get to you, and maybe it's maybe pretty quick to pick the people, but garbage in, garbage out. To Renee's point, more artfully said than I did. Let's make sure we get the right people on the committee.
So we've got a direction on that. And then the other thing we think is important is we need to continue the work. We need to continue working on parking, on common areas, and then that revisioning of the larger area.
One more thing for resources, Anita. Mr. Mayor, you mentioned earlier there have been previous committees. Are you referring specifically to the one that was a year and a half or 2 years ago? Or are you talking 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 15 years ago?
I mean, I would go back to the historic plan and look forward from there, because everything changed after that. So from the point of the plan forward, I would look at all the committees that we've had and the people that have been on there that.
Because that feedback could be really valuable.
Right.
yes.
Okay.
And they're still very interested. They keep asking me, when's it going to meet again?
Okay.
So I have some homework for everybody else in the room too.
Hey.
So one of the things we want to hear is, what's your role? We talked a little bit about it right now, but we want to hear what you see your role is in this process. We want to hear what your vision is. We talked about vision, so we want to hear from individuals what the vision for the area is. Are there communities that you know of that we should emulate? I mean, it's always nice to have an example to point to say, yeah, like this, rather than trying to describe it. And then how is your input provided? Is it something where it's as simple as surveys? Do we establish a website? Do we have face-to-face meetings? And it might be a mix of all of those, but just, what your preference is. Now, I've got a contact list started, and I've had a couple other names on there. What I'll do is I'll reach out to the people who sign up here and let them know how they can get a hold of me and start giving me some of this information and homework.
So make sure you get on Linda's list.
Yes.
Um,
It's up here by, yeah, good list.
Yeah,
Start circulating it, Linda.
yeah.
So Linda, I think this is what I was asking earlier. Have we ever done surveys like this? And before asking that question, what is your vision for the area? Did we ask that question ever 5 years ago?
In the
10
master
years
plan,
ago?
yes.
Pardon?
In the master plan, they did.
Yeah.
They had neighborhood meeting after neighborhood meeting.
And we've also done that for the comp plan, so yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I think what we have now is a whole bunch more tools, especially with some of the stuff we did in the comp plan, and it's a lot easier, especially for the younger generation, to interact digitally. And so I think we've got more
Right.
opportunities to ask that question.
And the zoning questions are timely because of the comp plan update. So,
Yeah.
okay.
So that's all I had for you.
Okay.
Like I said, I got good notes, and we'll move from here.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
to
Appreciate
everybody.
all your feedback.